Friends of Quincy resident Tim Bleefnick gathered a day to watch him and his family compete as contestants on the show Family Feud.
What's the biggest mistake you made at your wedding?
Honey, I love you, but said I do. I'm going to get in trouble for that, aren't I?
Yeah. If something ever happens to me, please make sure the #1 person of interest is Tim, as that is who would do something to me.
The town of Quincy, Illinois, home to under 40,000 people, was widely regarded as a safe, pleasant place to raise a family. Nicknamed the state's Gem City, Quincy did not have many issues with violence or crime. But this all changed in the wee hours of February 23, 2023. Later that same day, 41-year-old mother of 3, Rebecca Postal, would be found dead on her bathroom floor, lying in a pool of her own blood. And the killer would be closer than anyone could have imagined. This is the story of Becky Postal's tragic demise. Becky had married her ex-husband Tim Bleefnick in 2009. Together, they had 3 children and were described as a perfect family by those around them.
You know, when we knew Tim and Becky, that was when they had gotten engaged and were getting married, and it was a very happy time in their life.
Bleefnick was a valued member of the Quincy community. He was a Quincy University graduate where he had made a reputation for himself as an athlete. In 2019, he was inducted in the university's Football Hall of Fame. At the time of Becky's death, Bleefnick was working at Quincy Farm Products and Business Development. Becky herself was a career woman, having found her true calling in nursing. A compassionate and dedicated professional, Becky worked as a travel nurse during the COVID-19 pandemic, helping those fighting the illness in various hospitals throughout the United States. But what may have seemed like a perfect life on the outside did not hold up behind closed doors. In fact, behind Becky and Tim Bleefnick's wide grins and family photos were years of conflict, years which were slowly adding up. In 2020, Tim Bleefnick appeared on an episode of the popular game show Family Feud. During the show, contestants are asked questions, and the more popular the answer, the more points contestants are awarded.
What's the biggest mistake you made at your wedding?
Honey, I love you, but said I do. My mistake. I love my wife. I'm going to get in trouble for that, aren't I?
Yeah.
Bleefnick was in fact speaking from the heart. His marriage, all jokes aside, was falling apart at the seams. On the 21st of January 2021, Tim Bleefnick filed for divorce. But to those close to him and Becky, the divorce did not come as a surprise. A fierce custody battle ensued, with both parents wanting to have more time with their children than the other. In May 2021, Becky even texted a longtime friend to confess, "I absolutely think he'll try to take the kids sometime." To those close to Becky, Bleefnick had been revealed as an abuser. Becky felt that she needed to somehow protect herself from Bleefnick and protect her children from being abducted. But in spite of revealing that she believed Bleefnick had true mental health problems, she was afraid of filing for an order of protection. The divorce would be a tough battle, and Becky had reasons to be scared. Bleefnick did not simply represent a hypothetical threat to her and her children. He was armed, and she knew it. Becky's initial divorce attorney disclosed in November 2021 that Bleefnick had still not returned a 9mm handgun belonging to Becky, one that she had asked to have back multiple times. In response to Becky's concerns, the court appointed a guardian ad litem to their case.
I serve as what's called a guardian ad litem. The role of a guardian ad litem is to represent the best interests of the children involved in the case, whether it be a divorce, a family, or other type of case.
After months of debate, Becky initially filed for an ordinance of protection against Bleefnick's father on December 16, 2021. Similar to Bleefnick's case, she feared for her children's safety around their grandfather. The mother of three, it seemed, had started fearing for her life. In a text sent to a friend in 2021, she stated, "He has screamed in my face. He shoved me in front of the kids and has thrown things across the room where the kids and I were standing." Separately, in a text to her sister that same year, she said, "If something ever happens to me, make sure the number one person of interest is Tim. I'm putting this in writing that I'm fearful he will somehow harm me." But Becky's nightmare was far from over. Months later, as the divorce was still ongoing, Becky texted her close friend on the 14th of March 2022, saying that if Bliefnick doesn't get it his way, he may literally lose his mind. The text was in reference to the ongoing divorce and custody battle. In August 2022, a court order detailed how the children must be exchanged between Becky and Bliefnick. For reasons of safety, Bliefnick and Becky must stay within 3 feet of their cars when exchanging children. Yet, regardless of the safety procedures which were being put in place for Becky, tensions between the former lovers were rising and she knew it. In the meantime, Bliefnick started looking for a new bicycle. He created an anonymous Facebook account under the name John Smith and started inquiring on Facebook Marketplace. He asked about a blue 26-inch Schwinn mountain bike and a black Mongoose bicycle, which he also purchased. On the 5th of January 2023, a friend of Becky's named Melissa Young recalled running into her at a local store.
She looked very mentally and emotionally exhausted, nothing like I used to see her. She was really in hopes to get the divorce over with and stuff.
Did Becky tell you that she felt as though Tim could snap at any moment?
Yes.
Did she also tell you that she had found out that Tim was hiding money?
Yes.
Did she also tell you that Tim had told her, "You'll be dead before you have any of my money"?
Yes.
Around this same time, Bliefnick was beginning to also act strangely, and people were beginning to notice. He asked his neighbor, Bradley Amon, whether he had any security cameras pointed toward his backyard. He didn't. On the 10th of February 2023, Bliefnick finally made an effort to return Becky's long-lost 9mm handgun. He called the Quincy Police Department and asked them whether they could return it for him since he did not want to do it directly. His request was denied. But perhaps they should have accepted Bliefnick's request. More people were starting to notice his threatening behavior and the toll it was taking on Becky. On the 13th of February 2023, Ted Johnson, Becky's significant other, decided to stay the night at the house.
I would park right here, this area.
Right there behind the house by the driveway?
Yes.
Between midnight and 1 a.m. that same night, video surveillance detected a cyclist riding past multiple residences in the area. Becky's next-door neighbor also received a notification from his surveillance system.
Did you get an alert on your phone that there was motion in your driveway?
Yes.
And did you view that video?
Yes.
When you viewed that video, did you see a person walking in your driveway?
Yes, I did.
Incidentally, both Bliefnick's phone and his Whoop armband designed to track his movement were turned off between midnight and 1 a.m. Between 1:10 a.m. and 1:30 a.m., Bliefnick's Google searches included license plate lookup, title registration lookup, VIN check lookup, vehicle records, and a search for Ted Johnson's exact VIN and license plate registration. At 1:32 a.m., a phone call was made to the Missouri Department of Revenue, the authority which handles vehicle registrations. As the coincidences between Bliefnick's late-night Google searches and the mysterious cyclist prowling around Becky's house started mounting up, it was becoming increasingly clear that the mother of three might indeed be in danger. Yet for the following week, between February 14th and 21st, the bike rider was no longer detected on any surveillance footage. On February 21st at 2:11 a.m., the same cyclist was once again picked up by cameras in the same area as before. On that same day, Rebecca messaged Bliefnick asking whether he could keep the children overnight for the next 2 days. She spent the evening with Ted Johnson. On the following day, February 22nd, the same cyclist was once again caught on camera performing a similar route as before. The same happened later during the night, with a bike rider being recorded at around 1 a.m. The cyclist stopped near Becky's house and forced his way in with a crowbar. At 1:11 a.m., Becky attempted to call 911. She failed. The home security system alerted Becky that the front door was open. At 1:16 a.m., the cyclist can be seen heading back the way he came on surveillance cameras. Incidentally, Bliefnick's phone and whoop armband were disconnected from 12:28 a.m. till 2:07 a.m. on that same night. At 6:45 a.m. on February 23rd, a nearby resident left for work, noticing that Becky's front door was open. At 11:51 a.m., Bliefnick called his children's school to ask them to not let his kids walk to their mother's home.
And he told me that he would be picking them up instead of having them walk home.
And approximately what time did he arrive at St. Peter's School on February 23rd, 2023?
1:50.
So about an hour before the dismissal even began?
Yes.
At 3 p.m., Bliefnick texted Rebecca's father. He asked if he could call her to find out when she'd be picking up the children, since the school had called to inform him that they had not yet been picked up. At 3:30 p.m., Bill Postal, Becky's father, would enter into his worst nightmare. He arrived at Becky's home to find the front door open, something which he immediately noticed as unusual. Becky did not answer his calls. In the bathroom, his daughter lay dead in a pool of her own blood.
I went to check to see if she had any heartbeat. I picked up her arm, but rigor mortis had already set in.
She had been shot 14 times. Bullet casings would later be found around and under her body, meaning that she had been shot whilst on the ground.
By the time I answered the door, I didn't see anybody, but then I saw a man walking away. He had a long coat, so I didn't recognize him, and I asked him if he wanted something, and he turned around, and it was Bill, Becky's father. He said, "I need to use your phone, call 911, Becky's dead."
At 4 p.m., Bliefnick was told of Becky's death. He replied with shock and was audibly upset. On the 27th of February, police found an abandoned blue Schwinn bike near the Quincy Public Schools bus barn. The surveillance footage cyclist had been filmed around that area multiple times. Police searched Bliefnick's home on the 1st of March, but the investigation into Becky's murder was far from over.
This is the third known location to be searched in this investigation. Of course, that includes Bliefnick's home in Quincy and, of course, the residence in the 2500 block of Kentucky Road where Rebecca Bliefnick was found dead.
In these type of cases, you want to get as much evidence as you can, and it continues all the way until the trial.
During the investigation, police found shell casings in Bliefnick's basement, which matched the ones found around Becky's body. Becky's DNA was also found inside a plastic bag found in Bliefnick's home. This discovery tied into evidence found at the crime scene.
Tell me what you saw.
Multiple pieces of what appeared to be plastic.
Reportedly, the shooter had used the bag as a homemade silencer for his weapon. Once again, Bliefnick's recent Google searches incriminated him. They included how to wash off gunpowder, average police response time, and how to open a door with a crowbar. On the 13th of March 2023, Tim Bliefnick was arrested and charged with first-degree murder. He pleaded not guilty during his initial hearing and was denied bail. Throughout Bliefnick's 6-day murder trial, his attorney maintained that he was not guilty. Instead, they claimed a prowler, the same one who had been seen biking in the area of the murder, was at fault. During the trial, the jury heard of 3 simulations that law enforcement performed in order to retrace Bliefnick's steps leading up to the shooting. During the tests, it was discovered that the site of Becky's house was easily climbable, and it led to a window which had been pried open by the intruder. Bicycle rides were also timed according to the route taken by the security footage cyclist. Security cameras had captured the cyclist in the exact time frame Becky is believed to have been killed. Police also wrapped an identical plastic bag to the one the killer had used around a 9mm handgun and fired shots. The plastic shards created by the shots were similar in size and shape to the ones found around Becky's body. On the fourth day of Bleefnick's trial, even more Google searches were revealed.
Can you just wash off gunpowder residue?
Correct.
His phone was used to visit a website, DIY Quickly, how to use a crowbar to open a door.
Yes.
By this point, the extent of Bleefnick's premeditation of the murder was becoming clear. The searches included, can you identify if a shotgun shell was shot out of a specific gun? How to open a window from outside? Can I force open my door with a crowbar if I lock myself out? And can gunshot residue be washed off? On the 31st of May, 2023, Tim Bleefnick was found guilty on all charges.
We, the jury, find the defendant, Timothy Bleefnick, guilty of first-degree murder.
A sentencing hearing is scheduled for August 11, 2023. But Becky's tragic death is more than spousal murder. It is a story of long-term domestic abuse and how her cries for help were repeatedly ignored. A bereaved friend of Becky's wrote, "We've watched, waited, and prayed for justice. We have to listen to women when they fear for their or their children's safety. This could have been prevented. It breaks my heart to know that these boys will grow up without their mama. We have to do better." A GoFundMe has been created to help support Becky's children. So far, over $110,000 have been raised. The description reads, "Despite the circumstances of her death, she is remembered for the life she cherished, a life of compassion, generosity, faith, and fierce love for her family." What are your thoughts on this tragic story? Do you believe Becky's death could have been prevented? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. It's every parent's dream to see their child succeed in school and go off to college on a scholarship. For some kids, the pressure of this dream can become almost unbearable. But few could ever imagine that that pressure could lead to murder. For the Powell family, this dream of college turned into a nightmare when a phone call revealed the secrets their daughter had been hiding and turned their peaceful family home into a bloodbath. Secrets, lies, and the killing witnessed over the phone. This is the story of the tragic death of Brenda Powell.
Just unbelievable.
Brenda K. Powell had lived in the picturesque city of Akron, Ohio peacefully since her teens. After graduating from the University of Akron, she went on to work as a child life specialist in the hematology oncology unit at the local children's hospital for the next 28 years. Selflessly dedicated, her obituary describes her as devoted unconditionally to the family she worked with and her own family alike. She founded the hospital's teen oncology program and always made time for her husband and children. Yet the life of this caring wife and mother was soon to be tragically cut short by none other than her own daughter. Sydney Powell, Brenda's teenage daughter, was described as a great student when she attended St. Vincent St. Mary High School in Akron. She played soccer and 1 year of lacrosse. She had great grades and a high grade point average. Her parents, Brenda and Steve, were very proud. When the time came for Sydney to go to college, together they selected Mount Union University because of its small campus, and also because Sydney wanted to be close to home. Its Alliance, Ohio campus was only an hour away from her parents' house. She won a presidential scholarship that included a tuition break, relieving some of the pressure of private school upon her parents, and started at college in the fall of 2018. She came home for breaks and kept in touch with her mother. Sydney and Brenda's close relationship was noted by those around them. Brenda was Sydney's best friend. The family trusted each other. They used the Life 360 app, which allowed its users to track the other's whereabouts at all times. How then did this close family unit fracture? Sydney had a track record of success. Having done so well in high school and having earned herself a scholarship, her parents had no cause to be concerned about her grades. Mount Union had an app they could use to review Sydney's progress at college, but they rarely used it. They did not want to invade Sydney's privacy by checking up on her without good reason. She didn't share any details of her performance at school, not even when she came home for the summer in 2019. Sydney took a summer job with the Akron Rubber Ducks, the local baseball team, working in the kids zone. She went back to campus that fall without sharing a word of the troubles she was facing or the troubles yet to come. Sydney came home again for the winter break, spending a cozy Christmas and New Year's at home with her family in Akron, as though nothing had gone wrong. In January 2020, she went back to Mount Union, but this time there was a problem. In December 2019, Sydney had become unenrolled. In the fall semester, she had failed 3 out of her 4 classes. As a result, Sydney received written notice of expulsion.
Ms. Gaffney, if you can take a look at that and let me know if you recognize what it is.
Yes.
Okay, what is that document?
This would be the letter indicating that Sydney was suspended.
Okay, so that's a suspension letter. That's a letter that's sent to students?
Yes.
Okay. And that directs them on who to contact if they want to appeal or to address what's going on?
Yes.
Okay. And Ms. Gaffney, who is that letter specifically to?
This is to Sydney.
Now, you mentioned that this letter of suspension is sent via certified mail. Is there a tracking system that Mount Union uses to ensure that that student has proper notice? Is there a signature?
There is a signature required.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you mentioned that once a student is suspended, they wouldn't be allowed back into the dorms. Can you explain the process of who's allowed in the dorms and who's allowed to use Mount Union's facilities as a student?
So to live on campus, you have to be enrolled as a full-time student.
And part of that suspension, that student will lose access to all of those availabilities?
Yes.
Okay.
Nevertheless, she went back to Mount Union in January and continued this illusion of normalcy even with her roommate Lauren Curry, who was her best friend from high school. In late February, Sydney told Lauren that she would be moving away for a time to figure things out. In reality, Sydney had been asked to leave. In a personal meeting, college administrators had told her that she had to move out of her dorm and that her key card access would be terminated.
Ms. Gaffney, at some point did you yourself meet Sydney Powell?
I did.
Okay. And what happened? Were you able to contact Ms. Powell?
I was, and
Okay.
Sydney came over to the office.
Okay, can you describe that interaction?
I think when she first came in, I said, Sydney, there seems to be some confusion. It seems as though you haven't moved out of your residence hall yet, from what I can tell. But you're not enrolled this semester. You're not a student here this semester. And at first she replied to me that, oh, I am, but I'm still a student here. And that's when I actually addressed the fact that the suspension, I said, Sydney, you received a suspension letter that you signed for. And so we spoke a little bit further, and she said, well, yes, she had, but she had been hoping to get things changed or fixed, and so she had been trying to work things out.
So she did acknowledge that she knew about her suspension.
She did acknowledge then that she knew she was suspended.
When the administrators offered to call her parents to explain the situation, difficult it can be, she was adamant that she had already told them what was happening. The idea of the college contacting her parents directly about her own failure was visibly distressing. After having been a success in high school, she couldn't bear to disappoint them. Far from figuring things out, she spent late February paying cash for hotel rooms to maintain the illusion to her friends and to her parents that she hadn't been kicked out of college. Her parents initially suspected nothing. Sydney went to great lengths to disguise her academic situation, which was worsening by the minute. On February 25, 2020, Brenda texted Sydney asking, "Why do I always feel like you're scamming me? Just remember, you need to keep the grades to keep your scholarship." Sydney responded, "My grades are good, thank you very much." By this point, she'd been evicted from her dorm. But Brenda's momentary suspicion was not enough to see through Sydney's lies. The only clue was the college online portal. When Steve Powell, her father, tried to sign into the portal to send an additional check to cover tuition fees, it denied him access. He asked Sydney why it wouldn't let him into the portal.
Do you have any information that something might be going on with Sydney and Mount Union?
The only thing that I knew is when I tried to sign on to the, like their whatever app that they have on the website, it kept kicking me out.
Why were you trying to get into that portal?
Seeing, because the 529 plan didn't cover all the tuition for the year, so I had to make a personal check.
Okay.
So I had to see how much that was.
Okay. And when you had difficulty logging onto that portal, what did you do?
I asked Sydney what was going on about it.
Okay, and what did she say?
There was a mistake with Mount Union.
Okay.
And she'd look into it.
Okay, and at that point you had no reason not to trust what she's telling you?
Correct.
Steve had no reason not to believe her. She had always been a trustworthy child with a history of academic success. No one could have expected what would happen next. On March 3, 2020, Steve received a call at work from Mount Union. Officials at the college had to speak to him as a matter of urgency. They informed him that Sydney was no longer enrolled at the college. When he asked how long this had been the case, all they said was, "You'd have to ask her."
I believe Mount Union called me. They called me, and the conversation was that Sydney wasn't enrolled anymore. And then I asked for how long, and they said, "You have to ask her."
Okay. And I'm sure that came as a shock to you?
Yes.
And again, they said you have to ask. I know it sounds cold, but they're saying you have to ask her because they can't give you any more information, right?
That was my assumption.
Steve checked the Life 360 app to find Sydney was at home. Shocked by the news that she'd been lying about her performance in college while he had been writing checks to pay for it, Steve left work to confront her.
What prompted you to go home, to leave work and go home?
Because I saw on the app she was home, which I thought was a little bit early.
Okay.
The 360 Life.
The 360 app showed that she was home?
Yes.
If someone on that app comes home, do you get like a little buzz or notification on your phone?
If it's set up, you can.
Okay. So did you just happen to see that on the 360 app, or did it give you like a notification?
I might have got a notification. I don't recall.
Okay. So you get a notification that Sydney's at home, correct?
Yes.
When you see that, you go home.
Correct.
All right. And why did you go home?
See why she was home.
Okay. Did you have any concern for her at that time?
Just because Mount Union said she wasn't enrolled, but no, I was just going to go home and see why she was home so early. And
okay. And did you take your phone with you when you went home?
No.
And why not?
I just left it at work so the 360 app wouldn't show me coming home.
So that she couldn't use the same app to see him coming and avoid this necessary confrontation. Arriving at around 11:30, he found her alone at home. Sydney told him that she was merely having some trouble at college, but that she was still enrolled and still attending some classes with her friend and roommate Lauren. Steve responded with understanding. He told her that they'd get through this semester and that if she needed to take the summer off, they'd work through it.
So she told you she was essentially still enrolled but just having some trouble?
I don't know if she used the word trouble, but...
and again, I don't want to put words in your mouth. You tell me.
Yeah,
what did she say?
She was... Again, I don't remember the details, but I remember she said she was still going to some of her classes with her friend Lauren.
You remember telling her that, you know, you can't run away from your problems, you have to face them.
I said we'd go through, let's get through this semester, and if you needed to take the summer off or we would work through it. I remember she said, you know, all her friends have their shit together and she doesn't, and I told her, no, that's not true.
She said she didn't. Sydney said, I don't have my shit together, but my friends do.
Yeah, she didn't know what she wanted to do, it sounded like.
Sure.
She felt lost and afraid of disappointing her family. Unsure how to handle these emotions she'd kept hidden from him for so long, he suggested they call Brenda, who was at work at the Children's Hospital. Brenda decided to come home to talk to Sydney, and Steve made the fatal decision to leave before she got there. Brenda was an emotionally sensible and empathetic woman, more than capable of de-escalating highly emotional situations, as she had to do every day in her work with children and teenagers who had cancer. Steve couldn't be blamed for asking her to help with her daughter's sudden crisis. For the next hour, Brenda and Steve kept in touch via text messages. And at 12:41, Steve sent her the last text he would ever send her. "What did you discuss with Sydney?" Brenda would never respond. Brenda had left a phone message with the administrative office at Mount Union asking to discuss Sydney's situation. When college administrators Michelle Gaffney and John Frazier arrived at the office, they returned the call straight away. Phone records show that Brenda picked up the phone at 12:36:45.
Dean Frazier was sitting at his desk and I was sitting next to it. He dialed. The phone was answered, and Mrs. Powell answered.
You say Mrs. Powell, is that Brenda who answered?
Brenda answered, yes.
Okay. And what did you tell Brenda at that time?
So Dean Frazier was speaking and simply said, Brenda, this is Dean Frazier. I'm sitting here with Michelle Gaffney, our associate dean of students. We're returning your call, and that's about as far as we got. Did
Brenda respond to that introduction at all?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
What did she say?
I think he asked, "Is this Brenda Powell?"
Oh, okay.
And she said yes, and then he identified himself.
Okay. And Miss Gaffney, what happened next?
There was a very large or a very loud sort of thud sound, like a pounding or a thud, accompanied by a pretty loud scream, and the scream might have actually been first, and then the thud.
Okay.
As I think about it, and then there was sort of an expulsion. The other sound that I heard at that same time, or right after, was sort of an expulsion of air, like the air was knocked out of somebody.
Okay.
I'd always heard that expression of the air being knocked, having the wind knocked out of you, but I didn't. That's actually what it sounded like. And then several more repeated thuds. I don't know how to describe the sound.
No, and that's okay. And you and Mr. Frazier could hear this from the other end of the phone.
From the other, it was on speakerphone, right?
Okay.
Yeah.
Did you hear any communication during these thuds?
Just the screaming, and so we were both talking into the phone, saying, what's happening? Are you okay? Do you need help? What's going on?
Yeah, can you describe your mindset at this time?
I mean, I very definitely felt like someone was being attacked.
The call with the administrators dropped after an estimated 6 or 7 thuds and continual screaming. They called back and received no answer until the third attempt, when someone picked up at 12:40:15. Only 3.5 minutes after the beginning of the attack, at a minute before Steve's final text message to his wife. Frazier, shaken by what they had just heard, managed to ask, "Brenda, is that you? Are you there?" A voice responded, "Yes, this is Brenda." But the voice was not Brenda. The voice was that of Sydney Powell.
Now, Miss Gaffney, did you recognize that voice on the line?
Yeah.
Okay, was that Brenda Powell?
It was not Brenda.
Who did you recognize that voice to be?
I was sure it was Sydney. Both Dean Frazier and I looked at each other and sort of shook our heads at each other and said, that's not Brenda. And he then said, I don't, Sydney, I think this is you. This is not Brenda.
And what happened next?
The phone went dead.
Okay. And Miss Gaffney, what did you do next?
We called the Akron police. By that point, I had the phone number up and the address, and so we called the Akron police and indicated we felt there was some sort of situation at this house and that they needed to send someone right away.
They were on the phone, and there was a lot of screaming going on, so he couldn't really say if it was like a physical fight, but just heard like a lot of yelling and screaming going on, and then he tried calling back twice, and there was no callback.
In a single moment, a peaceful family home had become the scene of a crime. Impersonating her mother was not Sydney's only attempt at covering up what had happened. After the disastrous phone call, she set herself to staging the crime scene. She broke a window to make it look as though there had been a break-in, which would align with the story she would go on to tell the police, that there had been a break-in and her mother had told her to flee the house. But this scene was clearly staged. There was blood on the outside of the door near the broken window, suggesting it must have been broken only after the crime had been committed. After murdering her mother, she coldly and callously took steps to cover up her own guilt. At 12:51, Steve Powell received a call from a detective friend who had heard that police units were being dispatched to the Powell home. Steve immediately phoned his house and spoke to Sydney, who became hysterical when she heard that police were on their way and repeated the break-in story. Steve could only wait helpless at work as his family life broke apart at home. The police initially found Sydney hysterical. This hysteria soon evaporated, however, and she became catatonic, lying on the ground in the fetal position as the enormity of what she had done began to sink in. There was a cast-iron skillet on the floor in the master bedroom, alongside a bloodied steak knife. These implements of an ordinary domestic household, no doubt used by Brenda herself to cook family meals, had been weaponized against her. As the police examined the scene, the series of events only glimpsed by Steve and the college administrators over the phone became horribly clear. The forensic pathologist concluded that Brenda Powell had died as a result of multiple blunt and sharp force injuries. Sydney had hit her mother multiple times over the head with the heavy cast-iron skillet. She then fetched a steak knife and in a frenzy stabbed her mother repeatedly in the neck at least 23 times. Cuts and bruising to Brenda's face, arms, and hands suggest that she had attempted to defend herself from Sydney. Sydney, her beloved daughter, whose academic failures and emotional turmoil had until now been kept a secret. The revelation of this secret led to Sydney's eruption and Brenda's tragic death. No one denies that Sydney killed her mother. At trial, however, her attorneys contended that the attack had occurred in the middle of a psychotic break, meaning she could not comprehend that her actions were wrong. As evidence, they pointed to her catatonic state after the killing. They also suggested that her continued denial of her own reality, that she'd been kicked out of college, was in fact evidence of schizophrenia, and brought in 3 psychological experts to testify to this fact. Sydney had told one of them that she did not remember the attack at all. Her last memory of her mother, she said, was of sitting on the couch with her mother as she comforted Sydney. Sydney then got up and went into the basement. She said she did not remember anything further until the hospital after the attack. The prosecution pointed to Sydney's methodical staging of the scene as evidence of her mental fitness at the time. They called a further clinical psychologist as a rebuttal witness who testified that she had diagnosed Sydney with borderline personality traits and unspecified anxiety disorder. The psychologist concluded that Sydney was malingering, feigning mental unfitness in order to pervert the course of justice. Ultimately, the jury agreed. On September 20th, 2023, Sydney Powell was found guilty on all counts: purposeful murder, felony murder, felonious assault, and tampering with evidence. She murdered her mother and attempted to cover it up. On September 28, 2023, Sydney Powell was sentenced to 15 years to life in prison. She will be 38 years old by the time she is eligible for parole.
Ms. Powell, is there anything you want to say to me at this time? All right. Thank you very much. First of all, to the victims, to the family and friends, I am terribly sorry for your loss here. I cannot imagine what you have been through. I have received and read all of the letters that have been sent to me. I have considered the evidence that was brought into evidence at the trial, the statements of counsel, and all of the information that is before me at this time. Based upon the facts and circumstances of this case and in consideration of the relevant sentencing factors, including seriousness and recidivism, and applying the minimum sanction that the court has determined will protect the public and punish the offender without imposing an unnecessary burden on state and local resources, the court imposes the following sentence. On count 1, ma'am, I sentence you to an indefinite sentence of 15 years to life in the Ohio Department of Corrections. On count 4 of the indictment, I sentence you to 3 years in the Ohio Department of Corrections. Those two sentences to be run concurrent with and not consecutive to each other. Ma'am, understand that you have a right to appeal this decision, and that notice of appeal must be filed within 30 days of the sentencing judgment entry. Your attorney has indicated to me that you are without funds to hire an attorney to represent you for appeal. Is that correct? And you wish for me to appoint counsel to represent you? I will do that, and we will try and get that done before you leave the Summit County Jail. Ma'am, I will not fine you. I will not assess you court costs in this matter. Good luck to you, Ms. Powell. Thank you. We're adjourned.
In Sydney's efforts to conceal her own academic failures and her paranoid fear of disappointing her parents, Sydney only derailed her life further and caused an unimaginable tragedy that ripped her family apart. What are your thoughts on this tragic story? Do you believe Sydney's fate was justice? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. It was a peaceful summer's evening in 2022. 3 teenagers were spending the night at a friend's house, celebrating their recent graduation from high school. Mackenzie Shanquella was the designated driver for the end of the night. Her boyfriend of 3 years and his friend both trusted her to get them home safely. But what if this was the last thing she wanted? In this CCTV footage, Mackenzie can be seen driving at 100 miles per hour down a quiet street before smashing into a building. The collision killed both her boyfriend and his friend. Mackenzie claimed that this was a tragic accident.
I wish I could remember what happened. I'm just so sorry. I'm heartbroken. I love Dom and Davion. We were all friends and Dom was my soulmate.
But ironically, merely 3 months after the crash, she was seen dressed up as a corpse. Is this the behavior of an innocent victim or a cold-blooded killer? This is the case of Mackenzie Shanquella. It was the end of July 2022 in the peaceful town of Strongsville, Ohio. The seniors of that year's graduating class looked forward to bright futures. Their parents were proud of them. This was the case for Dominic Russo and Davion Flanagan, both 19. Dominic was one of 8 children, a go-getter who loved playing basketball and was driven to succeed. He was starting his own clothing line. Davion, too, had ambitions. He and his 2 biological sisters spent some of their early years in foster care. Both of their parents were addicts, and the children were removed from their parents' home as a result of neglect. Life in the foster system was no easier. When the siblings were adopted by husband and wife Scott and Jamie Flanagan, Jamie recalls they were very underweight. Rescued from a difficult life, Davion recognized that he'd been given a second chance. He was determined to grasp this chance with both hands.
He could pick up any sport and be good at it from the start. So he was mainly focused on football. That was his passion.
When leg injuries foiled his dreams of football, he developed another dream, that of going to barber college and opening his own shop. Davion was a resourceful teen who taught himself the basic skills from YouTube and TikTok, and he had only recently submitted his application to the All-State Barber College. Life beyond July was full of hope for both young men, yet an unforeseeable tragic ending lay in store for both of them. To all appearances, Mackenzie Shanquella was a typical, if risk-taking teenage girl. She had her own TikTok account where she posted careless videos of herself joking about her use of illicit substances.
I'm not even cool. I'm just one of those girls that can do a lot of drugs and not die.
She frequently posed with paraphernalia in photos taken in her car. This was irresponsible criminal behavior, but no one could have predicted where it would lead. What started as a whirlwind teen romance had continued for over 3 years. Mackenzie was now living with Dominic and his family, and apparently the cramped quarters had taken their toll on the young lovers' relationship. At school, she had been considered something of a bully. According to Davion's mother, Mackenzie would make it her business to humiliate people and took delight in it. In the past, she had told people who were depressed to themselves. This chilling lack of empathy was the first sign that something would go terribly wrong. Mackenzie and Dominic frequently fought and broke up before making up again as if nothing had happened. She treated him in the same way she had treated everyone else at school, displaying narcissism and an impulse to inflict hurt. Her own personality, combined with a pressurized environment that was constant cohabitation with Dominic, gave rise to one incident in particular that gave a disturbing taste of what was yet to come. On July 17, 2022, Mackenzie was driving her Toyota Camry on Interstate 71. Dominic was her passenger. They were in the middle of an argument, and as was so often the case, their conflict was taking place inside a shared confined space. Dominic wanted out. He phoned his mother asking to be picked up. When she was not available, he then asked a friend. This friend was on the other end of the line when he heard Mackenzie say, "I'll crash this car right now." Dominic's friend sped to the scene, and when he pulled up behind Mackenzie's car stopped on the side of the road, Dominic's door was open. As Dominic sat there, Mackenzie was hitting him with both hands.
He observed at that time the defendant striking Dominic Russo with both hands, and that he overheard her make a statement, an admissible statement, and she said, "Dominic, I'm going to crash this car."
In another incident that same month, Dominic recorded another argument. In the videos, Mackenzie could be heard repeatedly degrading him. Things had clearly degenerated between the couple. From living together, he was now no longer comfortable with her presence in his house. She threatened to key his car if he wouldn't let her in, or else break off the door handle.
You're telling me to key my car, telling me to break the door.
Key your car and you do not let me in the house.
You're going to key my car.
If you don't let me in the house, yes.
She counted down, enforcing a time limit for him to come and let her into the house. When Dominic still didn't open the door, Mackenzie said, "You're gonna come open this door right now, or there's gonna be a serious problem." Once again, Dominic called his mom for help. The involvement of his mother in both situations reminds us as to just how young both Dominic and Mackenzie were. The conflict in their relationship continued to escalate, but no one could have predicted where the relationship would end. At approximately 5:30 in the morning of July 31st, 2022, a car crashed into a Strongsville building at speeds of 100 miles per hour. This car was a Toyota Camry. Its passengers were Dominic Russo and his friend Davion Flanagan. Its driver was its owner, Mackenzie Sharilla. Dominic and Davion died at the scene. Mackenzie was unconscious and not breathing. She was flown to the hospital in critical condition. To all appearances, this was a tragic accident that had cut short the lives of two promising young high school graduates and seriously endangered the life of a third. This was what the community believed.
These kids are part of my heart. You lose one, and it hurts. It hurts till you cry.
It was shocking. We've known Davion for about 14 years. They've been neighbors of ours. We've watched him grow up from this little scrawny kid to this big muscular football player. And he was really like a third son for me, so it was devastating.
GoFundMe pages were set up for each person involved in the crash. Family and friends were donating to memorial funds for Dominic and Davion and to support Mackenzie's family in covering her medical expenses. As Mackenzie recovered, she took to posting on Dominic's obituary page. She wrote seemingly heartfelt messages saying things like, "I miss your laugh, your perfect smile, and God, you are the last person to deserve this. You had such a perfect life ahead of you. I wish I told you all this more. Please wait for me." Her grief was public and apparently sincere. No one could help but sympathize with Mackenzie, this teenage girl who'd been the victim of such an awful accident. But that was before they knew the truth.
Shortly after the crash, Strongsville police were notified that they had received concerning emails from the community that the defendant and her mother were seeking employment with the Los Angeles modeling agency. Kenzie Sharilla said to Vitali, "Thank you for the comment. I would love to work with you guys. I've been emailing you guys a lot. Such a great opportunity. Thank you."
Is there a date?
There is not a date on this, Your Honor. Based on the investigation, it was delivered to the police while the defendant was still in the Metro Health Hospital. So it was during that time period. She was in the hospital for several weeks. Shortly after being released from the hospital, the police were provided additional videos of the defendant from her wheelchair as she attended a concert down in the Flats. And again, Your Honor, I'm introducing these to the court to show the shocking lack of remorse. This was something that was being exhibited while the investigation was still going on, before she was charged and arrested in November of last year. And these were the sort of things that were coming to the police, and the shocking lack of remorse, coupled with the fact that the defendant was reported driving an automobile shortly after this event, that she was seen in Strongsville again driving a car. In spite of the fact that, as her mother testified, she got dizzy sometimes from a condition that she had to take salt pills for, in spite of the fact that it was, in fact, her mother who provided her with the car that she used to take Dominic and Davion's life.
12 weeks later, on October 31st, 2022, Mackenzie had recovered enough to celebrate Halloween. She and her friends went out on the town trick-or-treating, dressed as corpses. In a corset and heavy makeup, Mackenzie was almost unrecognizable. She certainly looked nothing like the grieving victim of a horrific auto accident who'd lost her boyfriend only 3 months before. In another outfit for the same celebration, she dressed as Drank, a popular concoction with teenagers made of cough syrup, alcohol, and a soft drink combined. Her friend was dressed as a Joint. Together, they celebrated substance abuse and death, the terrible hallmarks of her recent trauma. Indeed, the police found evidence of illicit substances inside the crashed car. And Mackenzie's blood had been tested the morning of the crash, and the level of THC in her bloodstream had been found to be over the legal limit. This on its own would be enough to charge her with driving under the influence, changing the traffic accidents into the consequence of reckless teenage behavior. But a mere 5 days after Mackenzie's decadent Halloween outing, the police charged her with double homicide. The tragedy that had torn apart 3 families and had rocked a tight-knit community was now under doubt. Had it been a reckless accident or a deliberate act of murder? Mackenzie's lawyers contended that she had lost control of the car. As a teenager, they suggested, she might have been easily overwhelmed by a chaotic situation and unable to stop the car and save its passengers' lives. The attorneys pointed to how common reckless driving is among young people. They described Mackenzie as inexperienced and irresponsible, but not a murderer.
Is it just kids being kids? Is it Dominic grabbing the steering wheel? Is it Mackenzie maybe speeding and say, "Oh my God, dark out, it's late, I'm coming up to this, I better do something," and she goes like that to avoid an accident, not acting purposely, but in fact trying to avoid it? Is it sudden acceleration, panic?
They cited her use of illicit substances as another factor in the crash. At this point, no one was denying that Mackenzie was in some way to blame for the tragedy.
The intent was obvious upon seeing that video that there was only one goal, and the computer demonstrated that there was no attempt to slow down or stop, that it was full speed into a building. And tragically, it cost 2 people their lives.
During a recovery in the hospital, doctors noted that she expressed feelings of grief, guilt, and shame about the crash.
Patient stated she, open quote, wanted to die, close quote, and that it was her fault for killing her boyfriend.
Whether she'd lost control of the car or been in charge of it the entire time, she had killed her boyfriend and his friend, and she was going to be held legally responsible. Mackenzie claims she did not remember the crash. She sent a text to Dominic's mother saying, "I remember turning onto the street, and then my vision fades to black. It really kills me not being able to remember anything. I've been asking my therapist why I don't remember, and she said it's because of trauma. But I'm gonna try to get hypnotized and make myself remember." If she didn't remember it, she could deflect the moral weight of what she had done. It would remain an accident, and she would not be a murderer. However, the police and prosecution took a different view. In their eyes, this was a cold, callously planned double homicide. Mackenzie, Dominic, and Davion had spent the night before the crash at a friend's house. They had smoked illicit substances, but this was not what lay at the heart of the horrific events to follow. Mackenzie had a plan, and she followed it. Pivotal to the case was the CCTV footage from a business neighboring the site of the crash. This footage supported what the car's recorded data showed about her behavior as a driver. Both technical analysis and the evidence of our own eyes watching the chilling video demonstrate that far from being high and out of control, Mackenzie's actions were entirely deliberate. The first video shows Mackenzie turning the car slowly and carefully from Pearl Road onto Alameda Drive. She diligently signaled her right turn, hardly the act of a substance-crazed, reckless teenager. But in the next piece of footage, something changed. The early morning was dark and quiet, until the car came tearing across the camera's view and smashed into a building. How could Mackenzie have gone from sober, careful driving to hitting a wall at speeds of 100 miles per hour in such a short space of time? Mackenzie had been to Strongville's Progress Drive Business Park before, and she knew exactly where and when she had to put her fuzzy Prada slipper down on the accelerator in order to kill everyone in the car. Her cell phone records held evidence that she had visited the area a few days before with the intent to kill, scouting out the scene of the future crime. She chose the area and the time early in the morning, before any witnesses would be around. This plan did not involve Davion. Davion only needed a ride home and was in the wrong place at the wrong time. Mackenzie did not think about him in the back seat. She treated him only as an item of luggage and had to be reminded by the judge of his tragic death when she was reading out her statement in court. Further evidence of the callous and cold way in which she'd snuffed out 2 young lives. The judge had no sympathy, describing her as literal hell on wheels.
This trial is a culmination of decisions made by one person, the defendant. Those decisions have forever altered the futures of 3 families, and of you also, Mackenzie. And your decisions forever robbed Dominic and Davion of the futures that they had before them. If there is one thing that can be taken away from this case, as painful as it is this. Every decision we make is important. Every action we make is important. Regardless of whether the decision is a good one or a bad one, or the actions are good or not, the result is the same. The consequences ripple through time and affect many more people than one might think at the time of the decision. In criminal cases, the state carries the greatest burden under our law, proof beyond a reasonable doubt. As I previously stated, I considered all the evidence presented. And at this point, I would like to comment specifically on Exhibit 802, the crash video. This is the type of evidence you can never unsee. You can never forget the visual or audio of this exhibit. It is chilling and tragic. As you review that exhibit, you know that you are watching the oncoming deaths of two people, and there is nothing that will stop it. The video clearly shows the purpose and intent of the defendant. She chose a course of death and destruction that day. Exhibit 802 crystallizes the deadly decision-making of the defendant. She morphs from a responsible driver to literal hell on wheels as she makes her way down the street. Mackenzie alone made the decision to drive the car, to drive an obscure route, a route she visited a few days before, and a route not routinely taken by her. Mackenzie alone chose the time to make the drive, early in the morning, when any reasonable person would expect that few people would be nearby to witness it or offer life-saving assistance. She made these decisions despite knowing, as any reasonable person would, that her mission of death could have involved others, not even in the car with her, other people, other cars, pedestrians. She had a mission, and she executed it with precision. The mission was death. Mackenzie alone decided to push the pedal to the floor and demand the ultimate speed of that vehicle to 90 to 100 miles per hour. She alone decided what was to be. Mackenzie decided death was the ultimate goal that day, and she alone made that decision for Dominic and Davion, and she continuously acted in a manner to achieve her purpose. Whether or not she intended to also kill herself is a matter of speculation. They have no relevance to the weighing of the evidence in this case. The totality of the evidence clearly demonstrates that Mackenzie Shanquella acted purposely and intentionally in the early morning hours of July 31st, 2022, and her purpose was to kill Dominic Russo and Daybell Flanagan. No reasonable fact finder could view the totality of this evidence in this case and come to any other conclusion. Her actions were controlled, methodical, deliberate, intentional, and purposeful. This was not reckless driving. This was murder. Court renders the following verdicts. Count 1. The court, having had count 1 tried to it pursuant to waiver, finds the defendant, Mackenzie Shanquella, guilty of murder, to wit Dominic Russo, in violation of Bukhari Vice Code Section 2903.02a, is charged in count 1. Count 2. The court, having had count 2 tried to it pursuant to waiver, finds the defendant, Mackenzie Shanquella, guilty of murder, to wit Daybell Flanagan, in violation of Bukhari Vice Code Section 2903.02a, is charged in count 2 of the indictment. Count 3, murder.
The judge found Mackenzie guilty of murder. Meanwhile, Mackenzie and her mother maintain that she is innocent of murder.
I just want to say to the families that I'm broken, sad, and lost, and my heart hurts for everyone, okay? Davion was her new friend, and Dom was the love of her life, and he was part of our family, okay? I'm just so sorry that this happened, and we're heartbroken, okay? And then, Your Honor, this was a terrible, tragic nightmare accident to have happened that she has no memory of, and she will never emotionally or physically recover from it. She almost died too, and we're asking that you please not run the sentence as consecutive. He was family, and we all loved each other. That morning of the accident, she called, I got a phone call that there was a car accident, okay? So we went to the hospital, and I didn't even know who was in the car. The names had not been confirmed yet. And I'm gonna cry because I missed Dom so much. We loved him so much. So I called Dom, like over and over again, praying that he was gonna answer the phone, and he didn't answer the phone. So then I tried to call his mom, and she didn't answer the phone either. And I still didn't know who was in the car. I didn't even know if she was alive. I didn't know what was happening. So then we were in the waiting room. And then his mom she did call me, so I answered the phone, and I was like, oh my God, like, I don't even know who was in the car, like, what's happening, was that Dom? And she said, what do you mean, my son is dead? And I was like, I'm so sorry. And then she said something like, and now I have to wait until your kid's out of the hospital, and then I didn't hear the rest. I was like, we loved him so much, and I hung up the phone. I did not talk about social media. I didn't even know what was going on yet, okay? So then, that was it. So in the hospital, that Vitality post, I commented on that because somebody had called her a murderer, okay? And she's not a murderer, so she didn't even have her phone at that point because the police had still had it, okay? So I jumped on and I was like, you know, she's not a murderer. She's more sad than most of these people commenting. She's been trying to get in touch with you. I mean, at that point, it was just an accident. So I commented on her behalf, not because of the modeling opportunity. Who cares about that? I don't want them to refer to her as a murderer, okay? And I don't even know how that comment had got on the phone because the police still had her device and she could not access her phone or social media. That's why I did it. I just wanted them to stop calling her a murderer so that when she did come to, and she did come out of surgery, multiple surgeries, that she wouldn't see all these people calling her a murderer because she would never, ever, ever murder the love of her life.
I'm hearing an awful lot about your daughter. I'm not hearing very much about the two dead people.
Dominic, okay, I'm asking you for leniency because this was a tragic accident that she does not remember. And Davion, he's a new friend. And I'm so sorry.
What does that mean? His life is worthless?
No. God, no, not at all. They all loved each other. They all spent every day together. You know what I mean? I don't know too much for him.
Isn't that part of the problem, Mrs. Schroeder?
Sorry?
Isn't that part of the problem, that they all trusted each other? Isn't that part of...
It's not a problem at all. It was wonderful.
It's a problem how they all ended up in the car together and two of them ended up dead.
I understand. I understand what it looks like. I'm saying that it was a tragic accident. She would never.
Well, we're going to have to disagree on that.
I understand.
Right. And I respect your position if you disagree with me.
I understand. But anyway, that's it. I just wanted to address those. We told her to go to those things, and then she did go with Dom's family. So look at that. Don't look at it with the... Look on that with different eyes if you can, please.
Those things are not relevant.
Not at all. Not at all. Not at all. But she's a good, if you would have a moment, all you would need is 5 minutes of a conversation to have with her to learn who she is. Just that, you would just need 5 minutes to learn who she is and what she's capable of not doing and doing, and you would see for yourself. That's all. I'm so sorry, guys.
Thank you.
I'm sorry.
I love you. The families of Dom and Davion, I'm so deeply sorry. I hope one day you can see I would never let this happen or do it on purpose. I wish I could remember what happened. I'm just so sorry. I'm heartbroken. I love Dom and Davion. We were all friends and Dom was my soulmate. I wish I could take all your pain away.
Her pleas did not help. The judge found Mackenzie guilty of murder. Mackenzie was sentenced to 2 15-year to life sentences to be served concurrently, meaning she'll be eligible for parole in 15 years' time. Some members of the victims' families found this unfair.
I am devastated by the loss of Davion. The world lost a truly special man.
Now that Davion is gone, I feel stuck. I feel as if I can't move forward.
Dom was not only my brother, he was also my best friend.
Be thankful that you're still alive and have a future, whatever that may be. Dom and Davion were robbed of their futures, their hopes, and their dreams.
A twisted, tumultuous relationship had ended in not one, but 2 horrific deaths.
We are just thankful that we feel justice was served today. There's not a day that goes by that we don't miss our son, and justice was served for him today. But honestly, there's no winners here. There's no winners here today.
What do you think? Is Mackenzie's sentence justice? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below.
Believe me, if I started murdering people, there'd be none of you left.
Some may think serial killers are a thing of the past. With the advance of technology and law enforcement, it is rare for a killer to have victims across multiple years before they are caught. But today's case will chill even the most skeptical of viewers to the bone.
Rex, did you do it? Rex Sherman is a demon that walks among us. A predator that ruined families. If not for the members of this task force, he would still be on the streets today.
He asked me if I liked true crime, asked if I knew about the Gilgo Beach murders.
A 21st century serial killer whose murders span over 2 decades. Innocent women whose fates remained unknown. That is, until now. This is the case of the demon of Gilgo Beach. On May 1st, 2010, sex worker Shannon Gilbert, who worked as an escort, was on her way to a job in the Long Island South Shore area. It seemed a night like any other, but unbeknownst to Gilbert, in a few hours, her remains would join those of 4 other victims, somewhere in the bushes along the beach she was driving by. She had met her client through the Craigslist website and was on her way to his house in a gated community near Oak Beach around 2 a.m. that night. At 4:51 a.m., Gilbert placed a phone call to emergency services. A terrified Gilbert can be heard stating that there was someone after her. She pleads with a 911 dispatcher, "Can you please get me out of here?" But the police did not respond to Gilbert's call. She did not know where she was and could not give an exact location. The following is the 911 call Shannon Gilbert made, in which police say Shannon can be heard speaking with her driver, Michael Pack, and her client, Joseph Brewer.
State Police.
Yeah, there's somebody after me.
I'm sorry?
There's somebody after me.
Where are you, ma'am?
I don't know.
You're driving right now?
No, I'm inside the house.
What house?
I don't know. Can you trace where I am?
I'm sorry?
Can you trace where I am?
No, I can't. What's your callback number you're calling from?
Somebody's after me. Please.
Are you in Suffolk County or Nassau County?
I'm in Long Island.
Where on Long Island are you?
No. 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 No, stop, no. Why are you calling me by my name?
What's the matter? Are you okay?
What are you going to do? What are you going to do to me?
Let's go back to Manhattan. All right. What's the matter?
Why? What are you going to kill me?
I think it's Suffolk County on the
Why are you going to
call Suffolk County?
You freaking mad? Come on.
I'm in the middle of nowhere.
Let's go back to Manhattan. All right? We're in Long Island. We're out near the water.
Please stop.
Please, Mike.
No, stop it, please.
Shannon then ran from Brewer's house at 8 the Fairway to neighbor Gus Coletti's house at 17 the Fairway.
Shannon.
What's the matter? Somebody after you?
She then ran from Coletti's home, prompting him to call 911.
Suffolk Police 873 with location of emergency.
Yes, I live at Oak Beach in the association. There's a young girl about 14 years old running around here screaming, and there's some guy trying to follow her.
All right, you have a description of the girl or the boy?
The girl is about 14 years old, got blonde hair, very small. The boy, I can't tell. He was into like a Suburban.
What color?
Black.
Shannon then ran to another neighbor's home, prompting a third 911 call made at 5:30 a.m. by Barbara Brennan.
43 the Bayou. Some woman is knocking at my door. She says she's in danger.
Police say they believe Gilbert ran into this marsh in Gilgo, which would have looked like this at the time that night. They believe that's where Gilbert died.
Right now, we believe it's a tragic accident.
Shannon Gilbert's driver, Michael Pack, and her client, Joseph Brewer, were both investigated and cleared of any wrongdoing. As soon as Gilbert was reported missing by her boyfriend, both police and her family launched a search for the woman. It would take another 1.5 years for the police to finally find her.
If it wasn't for Shannon Gilbert's disappearance, we may never have found the remains of the other victims.
On the 11th of December 2010, a police officer was performing a practice exercise with one of the department's police dogs. But what started out as a regular training day would soon turn into something totally unforgettable. The dog appeared particularly attracted to the marshes on Long Island's South Shore beach. And even when the officer would try to redirect him, the dog went straight back into the bushes. It was for good reason. Somewhere in the vegetation, hidden only shallowly, were the remains of 24-year-old Melissa Barthelemy. And she wasn't alone. 3 more victims would soon be found near Barthelemy, all wrapped in burlap. Melissa Barthelemy was last seen at her Bronx apartment on the 12th of July, 2009. Also an escort, Barthelemy found some of her clients through websites such as Adult Friend Finder. On that fateful night, Barthelemy was working. She told a friend she would return shortly. Barthelemy's mother reported her as missing 6 days later after not hearing from her. Barthelemy's younger sister, Amanda, reported some strange calls to the police. She had been receiving some strange calls never longer than 3 minutes on the phone. A male voice would taunt her about her sister's murder, and even confessing to it. 2 days after the discovery of Barthelemy's body, Amberlynn Costello's remains also surfaced. Costello was 27, lived in West Babylon, Long Island, and had last been seen alive on September 2, 2010. A heroin addict, Costello and her roommate worked as escorts in order to fund their habit. And just like Barthelemy and Gilbert, Costello advertised her services on Craigslist and another website called Backpage. Costello did not bring her cell phone with her on the night of September 2nd. She left on foot and did not tell anyone where she was going. Sadly, she was never even reported missing. Megan Waterman was also among the 3 bodies discovered on December 13th. Waterman, a 22-year-old escort, was last seen on June 6, 2010. Originally from Scarborough, Maine, she was last seen boarding a New York-bound Concord Trailways bus. In concordance with the other victims, Waterman was also a regular user of Craigslist and Backpage. She left the Holiday Inn Express, where she had been staying, at 1:30 a.m. June 6th, supposedly to meet a client. But Waterman never returned. Her family reported her missing 2 days later after she did not call them to check on her 3-year-old daughter. Maureen Brainerd Barnes is believed to have been the first victim of the 4 women who would become known as the Gilgo Four. On July 6, 2007, Barnes took a train from her home in Norwich, Connecticut to Grand Central Station in New York City. Barnes was aware of the dangers in her line of work. Usually, she would travel with a friend in order to ensure her safety. Only that on that particular day, her friend returned home early, leaving Barnes unguarded. And there was something else. Although Barnes normally worked in motel rooms, that night she told her friend that she would be meeting a client elsewhere on what she called an out call. Barnes was reported missing by a friend a week later. She was found dead along with the bodies of Shannon Gilbert, Melissa Barthelemy, and Amberlynn Costello. The women had all been victims of what experts called homicidal violence. Tragically, the search for Gilbert would reveal more than just the remains of 3 other victims. In 2003, Jessica Taylor's remains were found in a wooded area in Manorville, Long Island. But soon, her case went cold. However, on March 29, 2011, as the NYPD kept investigating the Gilgo Four, they stumbled upon yet another victim's partial skeletal remains along Ocean Parkway's Long Island, Jessica Taylor's. At this moment in time, a terrifying pattern began to emerge. Police started to suspect the work of a serial killer, one who had managed to slip through the cracks for almost a decade. As the bodies of the suspected serial killer's victims kept piling up, pressure kept mounting on law enforcement. But for years to come, they would only be met with more questions. The 4th of April 2011 marked yet another disturbing discovery. Just like in the case of Jessica Taylor's remains, Valerie Max had been spread out, with her head, hands, and right foot turning up on Gilgo Beach, 11 years after her torso was initially found in Manorville, New York, in September 2000. Originally from Philadelphia, Valerie was 24 years old and had been working as an escort at the time of her disappearance. She was last seen in Port Republic, New Jersey, and was only identified through forensic genealogy in May 2020.
Today, we are announcing that Jane Doe number 6 has been positively identified as Valerie Mack.
On the day Mack's remains were found, police were met with two more shocking discoveries. The first was the lifeless body of a 2-year-old toddler. The child did not match the victim profile for their suspected serial killer, and yet he was found on the same remote stretch of highway as the women. To this day, the boy remains unidentified. The second was the body of an Asian male. Once again, an unusual victim if murdered by the same individual. The man has also remained unidentified. These discoveries marked another obstacle for investigators. Were these two poor souls random victims of homicide? And had they even been killed by the same individual? Only a week would pass until two more bodies were found 7 miles from Gilgo Beach. They were the remains of two more women. One of them has also remained unidentified and has thus been classified as Jane Doe 7. The other woman is believed to have been the toddler's mother.
They discovered extremities tied to Peaches in the Nassau County section of Ocean Parkway. It turned out her gold jewelry matched jewelry on a female toddler. DNA confirmed this victim was the daughter of Peaches.
Gilgo Beach, it turned out, was a mass grave. But in spite of the bodies of the victims retrieved by police, their efforts were largely unrewarded. For the next decade, the case of the Gilgo Beach killer went cold. In the midst of the pandemic, police released more information about the murders in hopes of generating new leads. A website, Gilgo News, was launched in order to help advance the case. Among the evidence released was a belt believed to have been worn and used by the killer. The belt, which bore the initials WH or HM, was found during the initial stages of the Gilgo Beach investigation in 2011. Law enforcement was hopeful that someone would recognize the belt, with an investigator on the case stating, "We're hopeful that this photograph will bring somebody forward with information about the origin of that article." 2 years later, no one had.
These crimes may have happened years ago, but that pain continues.
On February 15, 2022, police created a task force dedicated to the Gilgo Beach murders. The Gilgo Homicide Investigation Task Force was supported by both state and federal agencies in the hopes that the elusive killer would be found once and for all. But with no recent clues as to who might have been responsible for the deaths, the task force had to go back into what evidence had already been gathered. Among this evidence was a suspicious vehicle. A witness in the disappearance of Amber Costello, one of the Gilgo 4 victims, recalled seeing a first-generation Chevy Avalanche being driven by the woman's client on the night she went missing. The owner was a man whose name will go down in history for the worst reasons. The vehicle was registered to 58-year-old Rex Hewerman.
Rex Hewerman, I'm an architect, I'm an architectural consultant, I'm a troubleshooter, born and raised on Long Island.
Okay.
Been working in Manhattan since 1987.
What has this job taught you about yourself?
I think it's taught me more about how to understand people.
He was very quiet, dark, kept to himself, and extremely intelligent.
The lead led to a comprehensive investigation into Hewerman. Among the first pieces of evidence found against him were the multiple locations he was identified as having used burner phones.
For each of the murders, he got an individual burner phone, and he used that to communicate with the victim.
Allegedly, Hewerman would have used the burners to arrange his meetings with escorts.
I told people for years, I said, I swear to you, I had dinner with the Gilgo Beach killer. He was an architect. I knew he worked in Manhattan. And then he got to where he asked me if I liked true crime, asked if I knew about the Gilgo Beach murders. He said, how do you think he gets rid of the bodies without being seen? And I said, I don't know. I've never been to Gilbert Beach. I don't know the area. And he was like, well, you know, it's really dark and desolate.
Brass claims that Hewerman also spoke about Shannon Gilbert.
About that Shannon Gilbert girl, the one from Jersey, you think that's connected? And I was like, I do. And he was like, yeah, me too.
The 26th of January 2023 would mark a highly important discovery in Hewerman's investigation. A surveillance team observed and recovered a pizza box thrown by Hewerman into a garbage bin located in the front of 385 Fifth Avenue in Manhattan. A DNA swab taken from the pizza crust was a 99.96% match to hair found near the bottom of the burlap used to wrap one of the bodies. After a detective took 11 bottles for forensic testing from Hewerman's trash, it was determined that a strand of hair found on Waterman's remains matched the DNA on one of the bottles. The hair belonged to Hewerman's wife, Asa Ellerup. Another hair found on Costello's remains was also a match. On the 13th of July 2023, New York-based architect Rex Hewerman was arrested in connection to the Gilgo Beach murders.
Rex, did you do it?
Since the initial discovery of Shannon Gilbert's body, the remains of 11 total victims were found at the site. Hewerman, turns out, was a bit of a criminal mastermind. A lot of the investigation into the killer was performed in secret. As the district attorney on the case stated, law enforcement knew that the person responsible for these murders would be looking back at us. This statement would turn out to be scarily accurate.
He tape recorded a reporter from 2012 reporting on the Gilgo Beach case. He made eerie sounds and eerie noises, and then he spoke. I hope you're enjoying your pizza. We had not ordered pizza. At the door was a Domino's pizza man with 3 boxes of pizza.
Whilst investigating Hewerman's internet activity, police discovered the killer had been searching the internet for information on serial killers and how police investigate them. Moreover, Hewerman had been consistently searching for information on the task force between March 22 and June 2023. On July 14, 2023, a grand jury indicted Hewerman in connection with the deaths of Barthélemy, Waterman, and Costello, 3 out of the Gilgo 4. With regards to Brainerd Barnes, the 4th victim found in 2010, police have said that the investigation is still ongoing, but that there is substantial evidence connecting Hewerman to her murder. Shortly after hearing the accusations against him, Rex Hewerman broke down in tears. The suspect pleaded not guilty to 3 counts of first-degree murder and 3 counts of second-degree murder. He is currently being held without bail. But regardless of the evidence against Heuermann, some found Heuermann's reaction to the accusations entirely surprising. His defense lawyer, Michael Brown, was quoted saying, "I will say to you folks that it's extremely circumstantial in nature. In terms of speaking to my client, the only thing I can tell you that he did say, as he was in tears, was I didn't do this."
He said from the moment I met him that I did not do this.
But could Heuermann actually be innocent? Authorities believe that the possibility is extremely unlikely, and those close to him seem to be coming to their own revelations, with Heuermann's wife recently filing for divorce. Suffolk County Police Commissioner Rodney Harrison, who has been seriously involved in the investigation, spoke on Heuermann's not guilty plea. Rex Heuermann is a demon that walks amongst us, a predator that ruined families. The families of the victims seem equally convinced of the man's involvement. Sherry Gilbert, Shannon Gilbert's sister, said in an email to NBC News, "I'm just happy it happened sooner rather than later. The suspect, Rex, deserves to rot in prison for the rest of his life. He destroyed many lives, so while it won't bring our loved ones back, it does help that one less monster is off the streets, and he can't ever hurt anyone else." Although some may not appear entirely convinced of Heuermann's involvement, the most important aspect of the investigation is that it is moving forward. Regardless of whether Heuermann is proved to have murdered all 11 of the Gilgo Beach victims or not, they all deserve justice. In a recent interview, Suffolk County's district attorney was quoted saying, "This case is not over. This is only the beginning." Do you believe Rex Heuermann is guilty? If so, do you think he is the author of all 11 murders? Let us know your opinion in the comments below.
Tonight, a nationwide search for 2 missing children has come to a gruesome end. Family members confirm that the remains found on Chad Daybell's rural property in Idaho are the bodies of his stepchildren.
A neatly tied, layered plastic bag buried in a pet cemetery. A bucket atop human remains. 2 cult leaders preparing for the Armageddon, and a string of suspicious deaths leading up to their arrests. This is the final chapter of Lori Daybell's story. Murderer, mother, and brainwashed cult leader.
Chad, where are Lori's kids? Listen, just tell people what's happening. There's people around the country praying for your children, praying for you guys. Why don't you give us answers?
That's great.
That's great.
Being a good mom is very important to me, and a good wife, and a good worker, and being all those things together is not easy. So I'm basically a ticking time bomb.
She's lost her mind. I don't know how else to say it. We're LDS. She thinks she's a resurrected being and a God, and remember the 144,000. Jesus is coming next year.
So what makes her a danger to herself and to others?
Threatened me, murder me, kill me.
She threatened to murder you?
Yes. And she said,
how did she do that?
She said, I can murder you.
I can murder you.
I will kill you because you're not Charles, and nobody will care.
Lori, from what I understand, said that she has been on 21 planets, and Chad has been on 31.
I wouldn't say planets, but I would just say lives.
Lives.
Mm-hmm.
So she's had 21 lives, and he's had 31. He was a holy ghost and has had 5 lives on this earth, and she's had 4 lives.
Correct. She had said that he had turned into a zombie the day before I got there. It doesn't add up. If they're in a safe place, why is she in Hawaii having a great time on her honeymoon when her children are hiding in safety? That doesn't even make sense. I think most people understand that.
The woman you just saw being interviewed is Melanie Gibb, former friend of convicted murderers and cult leaders Lori and Chad Daybell. After the deaths of Lori's 2 children, Tylee and JJ, Melanie came out in an exclusive video detailing the inner workings of Daybell's Latter-day Saints-inspired cult. The recently discovered chain of events which led up to Lori's brainwashing and her children's tragic ends is beyond what anyone could imagine. When did this all begin? Did Lori and Chad kill each other's spouses in the name of a false god? And what was the motive behind the killings of JJ and Tylee? To understand the many years of tumult which led up to Lori and Chad's arrests, we need to start at the very beginning. Chad Daybell became notorious following the publication of multiple books which he authored on the subject of end times and religion, which explained his dogma of multiple lives, as well as his special place as a Holy Ghost meant to lead 144,000 chosen people to God during Christ's second coming. He started publishing in 2004 when he also founded Spring Creek Book Company in order to self-publish.
I've recently released my autobiography entitled Living on the Edge of Heaven, where I tell more about my 2 near-death experiences and how that prompted me to write my novels.
In 2015, Chad reported hearing a voice telling him to relocate to Rexburg, Idaho, where he moved with his former wife, Tammy. In the fall of 2018, he would meet Lori Vallow, who by then had become an avid reader of his. In 2018, Lori attended a Preparing the People meet along with Gibb. It is there she would meet her future husband and religious mentor, Chad Daybell.
If you've had this Holy Ghost experience testify to you, you're on the right path.
It was then that Chad set his eyes on Lori, expanding upon the mysteries of God for a whole night. Chad explained that he had lived 31 lives, and that he could see whether people were light or dark. He referred to Lori as an eternal being who had lived 21 lives. From that night on, Lori felt she had a higher purpose. Originally Lori Cox, the future cult leader had gone through 4 divorces at the time she and Chad met. She was extremely close to her brother Alex Cox, who would also go on to be involved in the crimes and Daybell's cult. Throughout her life, Alex acted as Lori's protector, and he would protect her no matter the cost. His first attack on Lori's partners was on her 3rd ex-husband in 2007, Joseph Anthony Ryan, whom Lori had her daughter Tylee with. Claiming that Ryan had been abusive towards Lori, Cox tasered him and threatened to murder him. What no one knew at the time is that Alex was capable of much more, much darker things. In 2006, Lori married Charles Vallow. A longtime Catholic ended up converting to Lori's faith of the Latter-day Saints, or LDS. The couple adopted Vallow's grandnephew, JJ Vallow, and in late 2014, they moved to Kauai, Hawaii. At least for a time, things in Lori, Tylee, and JJ's lives were stable, but this peace would not last for long. In February 2019, Lori had met Chad, and the pair would communicate daily, convinced that they had been married in 7 previous lifetimes. At the time, both Lori and Chad were married to different people. Around this same time, Lori would go on to tell Charles Vallow that she no longer cared about him or JJ, and claimed that she was the reincarnated wife of LDS founder Joseph Smith. She then vanished for almost 2 whole months, and Vallow filed for divorce, claiming that he was fearing for his life.
She took all the money out of her bank account today. My truck had gone from the airport. She went to the airport and got it.
So what makes her a danger to herself and to others?
Threatened me, murder me, kill me.
She threatened to murder you?
Yes.
And she's talking in a spirit.
I will kill you.
Spiritual.
No, she's talking physically. I will kill you because you're not Charles, and nobody will care.
So she at this point doesn't think you are her husband?
She thinks I'm Mick Schneider.
Who's Mick Schneider?
I have no idea.
Okay.
It's the name she used. I don't know where it came from.
What followed Vallow's claims is a sequence of lies, murders, and religious fanaticism, the likes of which no one could have seen coming. Curious? At the Decoder, we compile reliable sources and evidence to bring you the truth about high-profile true crime cases. If this video is answering your questions about this unbelievable case, make sure you check out our other work. Your support is what keeps us going at The Decoder. The 31st of January 2019 was the beginning of the end for Charles Vallow. Police body cam footage shows him pleading with Lori to ask for mental health help at a time when Lori's obsession with Daybell's cult was beginning to concern her husband.
So what's going on tonight?
Can't get in touch with my kids.
How old are your kids?
6.5 and 16. Okay.
How long have you been trying?
2 days.
So what makes her a danger to herself and to others?
She threatened me, murder me, kill me. Yes. And she said,
how did she do that?
My bishop right there is in the car. He was on the phone with me today when she said, "I will have you destroyed." Was what she said there.
Okay, that's not a threat to kill you.
Yesterday was a threat to kill me.
Okay. What did she say yesterday?
She said, "You're not Charles. I don't know who you are, what you did with Charles, but I can murder you now with my powers."
Law enforcement, however, considers to be of sound mental health, and the incident was dismissed. In February 2019, Vallow filed for divorce, claiming that his wife would kill him if he got in the way of her mission. In the early summer of 2019, Vallow went to the police once again over Lori's threats. He said, psychologically, she's gone. Something has happened to her. But Vallow was not listened to, and on the 11th of July 2019, he was shot and killed by Lori's brother Alex in his Arizona home.
Fire department, what is the address of the emergency?
5531 South Four Peaks.
And is that a house in Chandler?
Yes.
And what is the emergency?
I shot my brother-in-law.
Okay, what part of his body is injured?
In the chest.
Okay, is he awake and responsive or unconscious?
Unconscious.
Okay, is he breathing?
I can't tell.
Okay, are you willing to go over to him and check?
Sure.
Okay, do you just let me know if you see his chest going up and down? How old is he?
It's not moving. He's 60.
Okay, and are you wanting to start CPR?
No, I don't know how to do that.
I can walk you through it.
Okay.
Where's the gun now?
It's in the other room.
Okay, just keep going with those compressions. Petey, did you have any other questions?
Yes. What's your name, sir?
My name is Alex. Last name is Cox, C-O-X.
Who else is there in the house with you?
Just me.
What's his name, your brother-in-law?
Charles Vallow.
His last name, I'm sorry?
V-A-L-L-O, Vallow.
Police and medics are on the way to help you.
Thank you.
How long ago did this occur? Did it just happen?
Yeah, maybe 5 minutes before I called.
Okay.
At that point, however, it had been confirmed that Vallow had been dead for at least 40 minutes.
So yeah, if you can just kind of tell me kind of what happened. It sounds like some of this may have started last night or something along those lines. Right. So start where you think it makes the most sense.
Okay. So, I
told you. It's a crazy question.
Well, he's always mad at me, right? Okay. And he doesn't want a divorce, but I don't like him and don't want to deal with him, so that's just how it is. Like, so we married for 14 years, we dealt with it for 14 years, of him being horrible to her. Me and him have always kind of not gotten along, like just since I was little. And so there have been a few times that we've gotten in fights and stuff like that, and so so I'm just kind of always scared of that.
Yeah.
He came over in the morning and he's like banging on the door. I'm like, oh great, here we go, you know. And I was just going to be nice. I was going to be nice as possible. And I had JJ stuff all ready for school. And so.
Do you remember about what time he got there?
He said he'd be there 7:30, but it was more like 7:40ish or 7:35. I don't know. Okay. But I remember looking at the clock, and he wasn't there at 7:30, and he's usually Mr.
Punctual.
Yes. So I was like, okay. He was just being real smirky and real like jerky, you know, to me, and I was like ignoring him, whatever. And so he was like,
your brother lives there with you?
No.
Okay.
He had stayed with me last night because I was worried he was going to come over and cause trouble with me.
Okay.
And just wanted someone else there, like my brother there, because I trust my brother. And
So this morning he comes back in and...
He comes back in, I wouldn't give him his phone. He was screaming at me to give him his phone. He was very worried about whatever was on his text that he did not want me to see. And so I was just holding it there, and he was screaming at me. And I was kind of walking towards around the house with it, so he couldn't get it. He was like reaching for it and stuff like that. And so Tylee came out of her room upset, and she had a bat. And she told him to leave her mother alone, like, right? So she was really, whatever. And he's screaming at her, don't you hit me with that bat, blah, blah, blah.
Like, is there a reason you put the bat up?
Yeah, he was walking towards my mom, and I just didn't want him to do anything, so I kind of just stuck out the bat. Like, my mom was right beside me, and he was right there, so it wasn't, like, between them.
Okay.
It was kind of just, like, I just stuck it out to be, like, keep your distance, kind of.
When you say you didn't want him to do anything, what did you think he was going to do?
Hit her.
Okay.
Yeah, it's, for the most part, been pretty, like, mundane, but there have been a few, like, violent times with him when I was really scared that he was going to hit me or hit my mom, like, just because everything was kind of crazy.
So Tylee goes outside.
Yeah, she was outside. And
then what happened?
Then they got up from that, and my brother had, like, stepped back, I guess, and then Charles was coming with me at the back, yelling at me to give him his phone still, because I had it in my hand. It was all really quickly, and then, and we were all right there in that room, except for the kids had been outside by that time, and I heard the gunshot, and...
So you heard the shot? Did you actually see the shot, or did you just hear it?
I had gone around to the kitchen to get away from him, and so back around. So I don't know if he went in the house.
I didn't, so I'm a little bit of a disadvantage.
Yeah, so I didn't see the shot. I heard it, and then I came back around and I saw that he was on the ground.
Okay.
And was freaking out, and so I was just freaking out, and it just went into mom mode. I'm like, I've got to go to get JJ to school. I've got to get to the kids. I just felt like I got to get to the kids, and so I just went outside and to see if they were in there. Okay, I didn't want them coming back in the house when all that was going on. And
you may not know this, so because I know you heard the shot. Do you know at what point your brother had the gun? Do you know if he had it when they got in their first fight, or did he have to go get it, or do you know that at all?
I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know.
Does your brother normally carry a gun? Like, I carry a gun everywhere I go.
Right. Like, I know he's a gun person. Like, he has guns and things.
Okay.
He's good with guns.
Did you know that he had one with him?
No.
When he came over?
No, but I wouldn't be surprised if he did, because he's very, very professional with guns.
Proficient, professional. Responsible is usually a good
word. Responsible with guns.
As all the other witnesses had similar stories, police did not investigate murder further. But Lori acted strangely regarding the situation, telling JJ's school a completely different story. A school employee said, "Lori just told us that Charles committed suicide last week. I can only say it didn't feel right."
Charles Vallow was a great father. He would do anything for his son.
The staff at JJ's school says JJ wasn't told about his father's death until August 2019, what would be his last day in the classroom.
He came in very angry. The whole day he kept saying, "My dad's not dead. My dad's not in heaven. My dad's just traveling. He's not in heaven."
Lori would later be indicted for conspiracy to murder Vallow. In early September 2019, Lori, Tylee, JJ, and Alex Cox relocated to Rexburg, Idaho. On September 8, 2019, Tylee and JJ were seen alive together for one last time. They were in Yellowstone Park, along with Lori and Alex Cox. At around 6:45 p.m. that same night, phone records show the party of four driving back to Lori's home in Rexburg. At 2:45 a.m. that same night, Alex Cox was tracked to Daybell's home. Cox left the following day at 11:53 a.m. In some suspicious text messages from Chad to his wife Tammy, he said, "Well, I've had an interesting morning. I felt I should burn all of the limb debris by the fire pit before it got too soaked by the coming storms. While I did so, I spotted a big raccoon along the fence. I hurried and got my gun, and he was still walking along. I got close enough that one shot did the trick. He is now in our pet cemetery. Fun times!" On the 8th of September, Daybell and Tammy had also signed an application raising her life insurance policy to the maximum amount. On the following day, September 9th, phone records once again placed Cox on Daybell's property, in the same general area where human remains would later be found. On the 22nd of September 2019, Melanie Gibb was among the last people to see JJ alive. Reportedly, Lori described him as being a zombie who climbed up on the cabinets, climbed up on top of the fridge, smashed her picture of Christ down, and then climbed up onto the upper cabinets and got in between the top of the cabinet and the ceiling.
Did she speak at all about JJ?
Yeah, I mean, he was all around us, and we were talking about him quite a bit, actually.
What did she say?
As I arrived on the Thursday, she had said that he had turned into a zombie the day before I got there. And she was pointing out behaviors of his, like, look how he's doing this, that's unusual, or look how he's doing that. And she was trying to create uncertainty in me about what I saw his behavior. Like, what do you call that? Like a doubt. A doubt. And I was looking at him, and I thought, well, I don't know, he kind of looks like JJ to me. You know, hyper and angry one minute and kind of chill or crying the next minute. Like, that's how his behaviors always were around me.
On the 23rd of September, a final doorbell video of JJ alive was recorded. His last confirmed sighting was at Rexburg's Kennedy Elementary School. The following day, Lori contacted JJ's school to withdraw him, saying that she would start homeschooling him instead. On the 1st of October, Lori rented a storage unit. Surveillance footage shows Lori and Alex visiting the unit a total of 9 times during the month.
The blue Rogue arrives at 2:25. You can see the timestamp says 1:25, but that's because the clocks were off, according to the facility. Lori is driving the Rogue and makes her way to the door of the building where her unit is. She gets out 2 minutes later at 2:27 with the man we believe is Chad. At 2:29, he pulls a tire out of the back of the Rogue and rolls it into the storage unit. Then 1 minute later, he and Lori both carry in together what appears to be a removable car seat. They put it in the locker, shut the door, and leave the facility at 2:32. Their entire visit is just 7 minutes. So why does this matter? Well, that same day, Brandon Boudreaux says that he was shot at in Gilbert, Arizona around 9:30 that morning while coming home from the gym. Brandon had been married to Melanie, Lori's niece, and he had a very large life insurance policy and assets totaling over $1 million. Months earlier, Melanie began spending a lot of time with Lori and her religious group. Then Melanie suddenly demanded a divorce from Brandon. The bullet missed his head by inches, and police say the person who shot at him was driving a Jeep registered to Charles Vallow.
That same day, Lori purchased a ring on Amazon, the same one she is wearing in her wedding photos with Chad. A week later, Tammy Daybell called the police on a shooter outside her house. Court documents later indicate Alex attempted to shoot and kill Tammy that day. 10 days later, Tammy died in her sleep. Chad claimed that she had retired the night before with a terrible cough and died in her sleep. In a very recent release of the autopsy results, it has been found that Tammy died of asphyxiation at the hands of another. On the 5th of November 2019, just a mere 2 weeks after Tammy's death, recent widowers Chad and Lori Daybell got married on a beach in Hawaii. At that point, Tylee and JJ's grandparents were raising alarms regarding the children's sudden disappearances. At the same time, Lori and Chad were telling people in Hawaii, where they were residing, that Tylee had died in 2017, or even that Lori had no children to start with. These combined factors drew the police's attention. On the 26th of November, police raided Lori's storage unit. Inside it, they discovered the missing children's belongings.
There was some winter clothing in a couple of boxes, a couple of children's bikes, and in the winter clothing, there was a couple personalized blankets. It had the pictures, looked like family pictures that were sewn onto the blankets.
Okay.
The next day, they served a search warrant for Lori and Chad's Rexburg residences. When the authorities arrived, however, they found them deserted. On the 6th of December, Melanie contacted Rexburg police. Supposedly, JJ had been residing with her. She came clean, saying that she had been told to lie about the child's whereabouts. In their effort to locate JJ, police discovered that Tylee had also been missing. 5 days later, as police were beginning to gather evidence in the Daybell case, Tammy Daybell was exhumed, and an autopsy was performed on her body. The results, however, remain unknown to the public. On December 20th, police announced JJ and Tylee's disappearances as possibly linked to Tammy Daybell's death. Chad and Lori are named as persons of interest. But they stay quiet. In spite of a $20,000 cash reward offered by the children's grandparents for their whereabouts and Daybell's family pleading for him to cooperate with law enforcement, both he and Lori refuse to utter a single word.
Chad, where are Lori's kids? What happened to Tammy, Chad? Can you tell us what happened to Tammy? Why have you guys been in Hawaii for so long? Listen, just tell people what's happening. There's people around the country praying for your children, praying for you guys. Why don't you give us answers?
That's great.
That's great. That's great that they're praying for you, praying for your kids. What? You have nothing to say? Did you do something to your children? Are your children still alive? That's a simple question. I've got 3 kids of my own. I can tell you every minute where my kids are at. Where are your children? What do you guys plan to do now? You have 5 days to get your children in front of a judge in Rexburg, then what? Are you guys innocent of any crimes? Have you committed any crimes? Chad, you guys have a lot to say on your podcast. You don't have anything to say now? Lori?
After Lori failed to present JJ and Tylee to Rexburg's health department, a $5 million warrant for her arrest was produced. She was seized and brought back to Idaho from Hawaii. On the 20th of February 2020, she was charged with 2 felony counts of desertion and non-support of dependent children. On her first hearing on the 6th of March, her bail was lowered and set to $1 million. In May 2020, an exclusive interview with Melanie Gibb was released, discussing her time with Lori and Chad Daybell. Supposedly, Lori had said of JJ that he was in the way of her and Chad's mission. Also, in May 2020, on the 8th, Alex Cox died of natural causes. The night before his death, Cox reportedly said, "I think I'm their fall guy." He would have been essential in finding out what happened to Tylee and JJ. On the 9th of June 2020, police searched Daybell's Rexburg property. Within hours, they found human remains.
They removed the rocks, and underneath the white rocks was some thin wood paneling.
Okay. And what did you observe them do with that paneling?
They removed the paneling.
Okay. And then what did you observe?
Initially, as soon as they removed the paneling, I could smell the odor of a decomposing body. Once they removed some soil, there was a black, what I can best describe as a black plastic bag with a round object protruding through the dirt.
Okay. What did you observe the ER team do after you saw that?
They dug a little bit more around the round object, which appeared to me to be the crown of a head, protruding through the dirt. They used a small, sharp instrument to cut through the black plastic.
Okay. And what did you observe when they did that?
There was a white plastic underneath the black plastic, and they also used the white instrument to cut through the white plastic.
Okay. And what did you observe when they did that?
I observed what looked to be brown human hair.
Okay.
It was what appeared to be a small body tightly wrapped in black plastic, covered in duct tape.
Okay.
I'm pointing to a fire pit on Mr. Daybell's property, just northwest of the fire pit. There is what we've referred to the pet cemetery, and it's just north of the pet cemetery where I helped excavate.
What did you observe?
I had been away from that area, but when I returned to that area, they had already dug down and located what appeared to be a mass of burnt flesh and charred bone.
The initial body that was found was JJ. A photo of JJ taken on September 22, 2019 shows him wearing the same red pajamas that were found on his lifeless body. And what you just heard the detective describe as a burned mass of flesh and bone was what remained of Tylee Ryan. Chad Daybell was also taken into custody on the 9th of June 2020. His bail was also set at $1 million after next day's hearing. During Daybell's hearing, a recorded phone call between Melanie Gibb and Lori was released. In it, Gibb presented concern for JJ and Tylee. The conversation saw Chad and Lori confronted by a member of their group for the first time.
Hello, sweet Melanie.
Hi, Chad. Hey, Lori.
Hey, let me put on speaker.
Oh, okay.
All right.
We're enough with the phone. How are you guys?
We're okay. How are you doing, babe?
I'm doing pretty good, thanks. I was wondering, where are you guys?
We're just hanging out.
Hanging out? Are you in Idaho?
We're near Idaho.
Oh, okay. I just wanted to ask you a question, if you don't mind, Lori.
Yeah, of course, honey.
I want to know, you remember we talked about JJ going to Kay's house, and you told me they went there, and now he's not there? I was wondering what happened.
Well, I had to move him somewhere else because of her actions. So
Was she doing something? Like, was she trying to come get him or something? Or, like, trying to kidnap him?
Well, she said that lots of times before, but
Okay. When I asked Chad the other day, I was like, hey, where is JJ? And he said, for my security, he didn't want me to know. So is there a reason I should be in danger to know where he is?
No, it's nobody. It's his danger. It's the danger that there's people after me.
Okay.
We just felt that if you knew, that puts you in a danger.
Well, just in a bad position.
Bad position.
Everybody, if they don't know anything, then they don't have to say they know.
Right, so you're just worried. Okay.
I'm just to keep him protected and
keep you protected.
And keep everybody else good.
I appreciate that. Well, I was wondering why you told the police why he was with me.
I just needed to have somebody so I wouldn't have to tell them where he really was, because they were going to tell Kay where he is.
Oh, yeah. So do you think it's like your family, or, like your family, your dad, or, those
my
people?
Family, well, not my whole family, but as you know, most of my family is working against me and with her, basically.
Yeah. Is JJ safe?
He is safe and happy.
I did have a question that I asked Al at one point, your brother, if I wanted to know, like where he was, and he said I did not want to know, and that he could not be found. So what does that mean?
I don't know why he would say that, but it's the same story. Like I don't even want Al to know. I don't want anybody to know, so that nobody has to be worried about it.
You haven't shown me anything.
I don't know why you're being controversial to me, or if you're recording this conversation for the police or whatever. I don't know what your intention is on this phone call. But I love you with all my heart, and I have forever, and I will always love you.
I appreciate those words, but if you really love me, you wouldn't have told the police that I had JJ with me.
Flashing forward to the 7th of October 2021, law enforcement released Charles Vallow's murder case. Lori was accused of conspiracy to murder her ex-husband, on top of her other convictions relating to Tylee and JJ. But in another turn of events, on the 11th of April 2022, Lori was deemed psychologically unfit to stand trial. A week later in court, Lori refused to speak. Her attorney asked for a not guilty plea to be entered on her behalf.
Your Honor, she intends to remain silent.
However, on the 26th of May, the prosecution announced that they will be pursuing the death penalty for Lori as well as Chad, whose death penalty pursuit has been announced earlier this year. At this point, Chad is also accused of Tammy's first-degree murder. Lori's trial began on the 3rd of April 2023. There's no release date for Chad's. No one except for Lori and Chad Daybell, as well as the deceased Alan Cox, will ever truly know what happened to the unfortunate JJ and Tylee. The children's manners of death have not been released, and when it comes to Tylee, it is unlikely that we will ever know unless either of the Daybells decide to break their unrelenting silence. What is known is that based on the state of Tylee's body, she had been cut up and burned prior to being buried. Strikingly, it is known that Daybell used to work as a grave digger. As for a motive for the killing of the two innocents, well, no one really knows. Friends of Lori suspect that Tylee was viewed as a liability, that having been there on the day Charles Vallow died, she might have known too much about her mother's and uncle's involvement. Others believe that the children represented some of the dark spirits that the Daybells claimed to be seeing. Perhaps that in itself was a good enough reason for the fanatics to end their lives. What remains clear is that no matter Chad and Lori's eccentric beliefs, there is no right reason for killing two children. There is no reason both their spouses should have died. And there is no good reason for the chain of destruction that the Daybells have left in their wake.
She boasted to have an elite relationship with her mother. The mother, who should be a great role model to her daughter, has brought about a critical trouble for her with the poisoning affair. Hi everyone. In this video, we will review the case of Mahek Bukhari, a well-known British TikTok video creator and social media influencer who, along with her mother, is charged with the murder of her mother's lover and his friend. So join me. Maybe together we find some new clues because the story is dark. With the emergence of social media platforms, many individuals discovered a new way to communicate with others, expressing themselves by posting videos and receiving views and likes. Many of these people made a good fortune with their active presence on social media, and Mahek Bukhari is one of them. Before going straight to the murder charge and how this famous influencer got involved in it, let's have a quick look at Mahek's life. Mahek, known as Maya, was born in 1999 in England, UK, although her exact date of birth is unclear. She is a British national with Pakistani ethnicity. Mahek is a social media personality, particularly a TikTok and Instagram influencer, sharing videos about fashion, cosmetics, and lifestyle niches from her bedroom filled with designer clothing and footwear on her social media page. She could gain many followers upon creating makeup tutorials online and also participating in TikTok challenges. She had 129,000 followers on TikTok and 45,000 on Instagram, as well as over 3,900 followers on her channel on YouTube, where she was known as Maybe Vlogs. She has received 3.3 million likes for her videos on TikTok. Maybe Vlogs' net worth is estimated to be about $250,000 US as of October 2022. Mahek lives with her parents and brother in Tunstall, Stoke-on-Trent. Her father is Ali Raza Bukhari and her mother is Ansreen Bukhari, the managing director of City Security Plus. Mahek is reported to be very close to her mother, with whom she appears in most of her videos. According to some available information about Mahek, she studied in a private school in her hometown and then went to a prestigious university where she received a bachelor's degree in fashion. She goes regularly to gym to keep her body fit. She prefers homemade food and tries to avoid junk food since she is very concerned with her health. It seems that I have provided necessary available information about Mahek. But what happened that this TikTok star name made headlines? As it happened, Mahek's mother, 45-year-old Ansreen, a married woman with children, was in a 3-year affair with 21-year-old Saqib Hussain, whom she met on a dating app. In January 2022, Ansreen decided to end her relationship with the young man. Heartbroken Saqib expressed his love for Ansreen, or as he called her, Anzi, begging her to continue their affair. As Saqib had confessed to her sister, he had started the relationship as a bit of fun, but had fallen in love with Ansreen. As estimated by Saqib's family, he had spent between £2,000 and £3,000 on Ansreen during their 3-year relationship, taking her out to hotels and dining in restaurants. Meanwhile, he had recorded sexually explicit photos and videos of Ansreen with himself, which were later found on his Instagram account. As reported, Saqib had made 1,702 calls to Ansreen in the months before his death, lasting 5 seconds or less, while Ansreen had called him about 200 times, with just a handful lasting over 3 minutes. When Ansreen did not answer Saqib's calls, provoked by anger, he attempted to blackmail Ansreen to convince her to return his calls, and threatened her to send the videos and photos to Ansreen's husband and son unless she speaks to him. He said, "I'll tell him and make all your pics and video viral right now." On the other hand, Mahek was aware of her mother's relationship with Saqib, and while not approving, was trying to tolerate it. On January 4th, Ansreen confided to Mahek about the blackmail issue. The existence of explicit materials would not only break Ansreen's marriage, but would also destroy Mahek's relationship with her father, as well as her reputation as an active and successful social media influencer. Considering the trouble they were facing, Mahek replied to her mother, Ansreen, "I'll soon get him jumped by guys and he won't know what day it is." Then the tragedy goes on. Mahek contacted Saqib, setting a trap for her mother's younger lover. She convinced Saqib to release the explicit videos and pictures and receive up to £3,000 in return. Mahek had told Saqib that he could meet Ansreen in the car park of Tesco in Hamilton, Leicester, and hand over his phone. According to Mahek's plan, if Saqib did not want to hand the phone over, they would cause him a serious injury, or silence him forever. Saqib's sister, Sana Hussein, who once had met Ansareen outside a hotel and told his brother to not continue his relationship with a married woman, later stated that upon hearing the meet-up plan from Saqib, she had warned him about the danger of such a meeting and the possibility that someone would rush him. It was a chilling and heartless plan, right? It ended more tragically when another man, an innocent person, got involved and killed as well. Let's go through the rest of the sad story. 21-year-old Mohammed Hashim Jazzuddin from Banbury in Oxfordshire was Saqib's cousin and best friend. Early on February 11th, 2022, Jazzuddin drove his friend on his silver Skoda Fabia to meet Mahek and Ansareen at the Hamilton Tesco car park in Leicester. As soon as reaching Tesco car park in Leicester, they spotted two cars waiting there with people wearing balaclavas inside. They got suspicious and fled up the A46. Those two cars left Tesco car park and started pursuing the Skoda Fabia, a pursuit that lasted over 10 minutes. During the pursuit, there was a phone conversation between Mahek and Saqib in which Mahek said, "Watch what I do to you." Being chased at up to 100 miles per hour along the A46, Saqib made a panicked call to 999, Leicestershire Police, telling the operator, "I'm being followed by two vehicles. They're trying to block me in. They've got balaclavas on. They're trying to ram me off the road. They're trying to kill me. I'm going to die. I just came to Leicester to see one of my mates who got to university here. They hit into the back of the car very fast. Please, I'm begging you. I'm going to die. No." Then his scream, followed by a loud crash noise, was heard. It was about 1:30 a.m. on February 11th, 2022. The Skoda Fabia smashed into the central reservation of the A46 dual carriageway by the Six Hills junction near Leicester, hit a tree, split into two, and burst into flames after being rammed off the road. Both Saqib and Jazzuddin were killed instantly in the collision and could later be identified by dental records. According to PC Joseph Raddings, the first police officer who arrived at the crash scene, hearing popping and banging sounds coming from the car and realizing debris flung out from the wreck, made him quite certain that there was no chance for the car passengers to be alive. Police officers could see a body hanging out the remains of the nearside passenger seat, but rescuers could not help due to the severe flame. 4 hours before the horrific crash, Saqib had messaged Mahek requesting to speak to Ansareen. With her refusal, Saqib sent a message that read, "I'm going to message your dad. Show him all the proof, the pictures, the messages with her saying, 'I love you.'" Now you may ask how police could find out that this incident was not a tragic road traffic accident, but a murder case. Bear with me. I will clarify it as it was later explained by the police. The police had no doubt that Saqib and Jazzuddin were murdered. The key indicator to this fact was the call that Saqib made to 999, explaining the issue and asking for help. For accurately investigating the crash, police referred to CCTV evidence, which showed the footage of the two cars which Saqib was talking about in his distressed phone call to 999, Audi TT and Seat Leon. With the cooperation of other forces, police could trace the Audi TT and Seat Leon. Later in the morning, and just 8 hours after the horrific crash, police went to Mahek and Ansareen's house for investigation. The Audi TT was rented by Mahek since her own car was left in the repair shop. While police were interviewing Mahek's brother about the car, she had a 14-minute call with another person involved in the crash, Reese Jamal, in order to fabricate a story to deceive the police. Mahek allegedly lied to police and claimed that she and her mother were going to Nottingham and accidentally ended up in Leicester. When Mahek was being interviewed by police, she admitted to know Saqib and that he had been harassing her. She did not mention her mother's affair with Saqib, pretending that she herself had met him once and had exchanged numbers since she had thought he was a nice man. But later, Saqib had started circulating fake pictures of both her and her mother and asked for £2,000 to £3,000 to stop harassing her. Moreover, Mahek claimed that Saqib had threatened to kill her father and brother. She stated that she was to meet Saqib at the Tesco store, but he did not show up. Then she drove up the A46 with her mother, where she saw a blue car disturbing a silver car. She said she did not know Saqib was inside the silver car, and she had not seen the driver of the blue car. She alleged that later they saw the crash scene with the silver car on flames, and she burst into tears at the sight of the wreck. While arresting Mahek, police told her to hand over her phone and the code to unlock it, and she provided a wrong PIN number to hide her involvement in the murder. Meanwhile, tracing the Seat Leon led police to 6 other individuals involved in the crash. Natasha Akhtar, 22, the owner of the Seat Leon, Rees Jamal, 22, Rakan Karwan, 28, Mohammed Patel, 20, Sanaf Gula Mustafa, 22, and Amir Jamal, 27, were the people arrested, along with Mahek and Ansreen. Rakan Karwan was driving the Audi TT with Mahek, Ansreen, and Patel as passengers. Rees Jamal was the driver of the Seat Leon that collided with the Skoda Fabia, with the rest of the group as passengers. As later prosecutor Collingwood Thompson KC told the jury, all 8 had been charged equally with murder because of their alleged intentions on that night. They have all admitted to having been in one of the 2 cars chasing the Skoda. However, according to the prosecutor, they did not have any chance to lie because the data retrieved from their mobile phones are a reliable evidence of their involvement. However, all 8 have denied a charge of murder and an alternative count of manslaughter. According to the prosecutor, the crash was certainly not a road traffic accident, since CCTV footage of the scene shows that after the crash, they pulled in to check on damage to the Seat Leon, while one of them had a balaclava on, as Saqib had told the operator. The Audi TT and Seat Leon, which were taken by the police to be forensically examined for possible damages, show other evidences. Nothing serious was found on the Audi TT, while the Seat Leon had damage to the front, showing its collision at more than 80 miles per hour with the rear of the Skoda Fabia. The sophisticated tracking computer on the Audi TT could give the police a lot of data about where the car was and how fast it was going at all points while chasing the Skoda Fabia. Moreover, cameras on the M6 could record Akhtar's Seat Leon automatic number plate, which led to her arrest when she pulled into a petrol station near Junction 5 of the motorway near Castle Bromwich. On the other hand, Ansreen Bukhari's husband, Ali Raza, has told Leicestershire police that he was not aware of his wife's affair for the past 3 years, and even did not know she was in a relationship with anyone. But he remembers that once, 4 or 5 months before February, someone with the name Saqib had sent him a comment on his TikTok account, telling him his wife was having an affair. He has stated that he had never told his wife about it, assuming it to be just nonsense. As the prosecutor has said, this case is about love, obsession, anger, extortion, and ultimately, murder.
Cool, calm and callous, Tarakjot Singh strolls into the Mile End Bunnings with murder on his mind. He signs the COVID check-in, then walks the aisles in search of the perfect tools. The 23-year-old knows exactly how he plans to kill his nursing student ex-girlfriend, Jasmine Kaur.
People are rarely who they first seem to be. Whether they are your friend, colleague, or even partner, there are many layers to a person, some which are better left unknown. Because the truth is, you never know what someone is capable of until they are pushed to their limit. In the space of just a few hours, a once loving relationship can turn into a horrific murder. This is the tragic story of Jasmine Kaur. In 2016, a young man left his home village of Balala to pursue his dream. Like many other men his age, Tarakjot Singh moved his life from the Samrala region of India to the city of Adelaide in Australia. Singh had enrolled in UNISA University, where he would go on to study computer science. It was there he would later meet 21-year-old Jasmine Kaur. Originally from Naranga, India, Jasmine's family had moved to Adelaide. She too was a UNISA student undergoing a nursing course. Kaur and Singh's relationship was relatively short, lasting only 9 months. But in spite of its length, it proved to be rather intense. Singh, it turned out, had very strong feelings for Kaur from quite early on in the relationship. Perhaps his feelings were too strong. Kaur did not reciprocate these feelings, however, and as time went on, began to notice some increasingly concerning behaviors manifesting in Singh. He had become very controlling and possessive, desiring to know everyone Jasmine conversed with or saw. He felt entitled in intruding upon his girlfriend's life, in spite of Kaur's numerous attempts at stopping him. She endured his behavior for a while until she just couldn't take any more. On the 28th of January 2021, Jasmine Kaur entered a police station with the intention of filing a report. She was clearly distraught. In an act of courage, she decided to provide a statement to the police informing them about Singh's obsessive behavior. In a direct quote, Kaur stated, "He was over-possessive and wanted to control who I spent time with." She also established that she had broken things off with Singh on the 4th of January 2021. However, she explained Singh did not take the breakup well. Instead, he threatened suicide. Although not uncommon amongst possessive personalities such as Singh's, the suggestion of suicide was not just an empty threat in his case. It turns out the student had recently spent some time in a short-term stay mental health unit. In her statement, Kaur detailed some of Singh's excessive behaviors. She wrote that if Singh got upset over her going out with friends, she would be asked to return immediately and abandon her plans. As a result of Kaur's statement, Singh was cautioned for stalking in February 2021. From then on, if he were to be reported again, Singh risked being arrested and registered as an offender. So he stopped stalking Jasmine and made a much worse plan instead. In early March 2021, Singh headed over to a local Bunnings store where he would make a string of very suspicious purchases. He bought a shovel, cable ties, gaffer tape, gloves, and a jerry can. In the CCTV footage obtained from the store, Singh can be seen strolling casually through its aisles. He even asked a store worker for help before checking out. A more skeptical employee might have noticed the strange correlation between the objects in Singh's basket, but on that day, no one did. Singh felt relieved. The first step of his plan was over. His second step, which he also ticked off successfully, was borrowing his friend's car and swapping out his SIM card. The easiest part was over with. Singh hopped into the borrowed car, a blue metallic Commodore, and headed over to Southern Cross Homes, Jasmine's workplace. After finishing work, Jasmine walked over to the care home's parking lot at around 10 p.m. She would normally hop into her car and head home. But unbeknownst to her, Singh was also there, watching and waiting. In a moment's flash, Kaur was abducted by Singh. She would never be seen again. As feelings of panic and fear filled the unfortunate Kaur, it became more and more clear to her that Singh had hatched a plan. He was driving with purpose. But where? And why? At around 10:46 p.m., a safety cam captured the blue car. They had reached Virginia. They were later snapped by another camera near Two Wells at 12:09 a.m. and as they passed Port Wakefield at 12:40 a.m. By this point, Singh had been driving for almost 3 hours. Try imagining the terror going through Jasmine Kaur's mind as the man she once thought she loved drove her further and further away from everything she knew and into a world of darkness. At 3:07 a.m., 5 hours and 650 kilometers away from where Jasmine Kaur was last seen alive, Singh's car was snapped by another road camera as he passed through Sterling North. Singh then stopped near Death Rock in the Flinders Ranges. Kaur's hands and feet were tied, and she was blindfolded. Then she waited. As Kaur waited, terrified and deprived of movement, Singh would begin one of the final steps of his evil plan. With his newly bought shovel, Singh dug. Hours went by as Singh kept digging, and Kaur's fear kept growing. Not knowing what she was about to endure was much, much worse than everything she had gone through before. Singh then placed Kaur in the newly dug hole and began piling dirt on top of her conscious, fully awake body. Yet in spite of her screams of terror, and in spite of the hellish experience that Singh was actively putting the woman through, he did not stop. In the wee hours of March 6, 2021, Jasmine Kaur was buried alive. After completing his grisly plan, Singh dumped Kaur's belongings, along with cable ties, tape, gloves, and a balaclava nearby. Singh's car was snapped by a camera as it passed the other way, almost 12 hours after the first photo was taken on the 6th of March at 2:27 p.m.
If you take out travelling time, that leaves about 8 hours to bury Jasmine, and a considerable amount of time unaccounted for.
In Adelaide, Kaur's family became concerned over her not attending work that day. Her car was found in her workplace's parking lot. Thus, the Kaurs walked into Henley Street Police Station and declared Jasmine missing. After getting home on March 6th, Singh is almost immediately questioned by police officers regarding Kaur's disappearance. He stated that he could not remember the last time he saw Kaur and that he was home the night of the murder. However, it would only be a day later, on March 7th, that Singh declared Kaur was indeed dead. However, the man said he had nothing to do with it. Singh told law enforcement officers that Kaur had taken her own life and that he had been the one to find her. Feeling sorry for Kaur, Singh decided to bury her himself. Singh then proceeded to lead officers to Kaur's exact burial spot. Upon arriving in the Flinders Ranges, officers found Kaur's shoes, glasses, and work name badge, and were then led to something much worse. The following day, on March 8, 2021, Singh was arrested and charged with Jasmine Kaur's murder. In a text that Singh had written to Kaur but never sent, the killer wrote, "Your bad luck is that I am still alive. Wait and watch. Each and every single one will get the answer." In a tragic turn of events, Singh's threats could not have turned out to be any more truthful. Before the trial took place, Kaur's family held a memorial at her burial site in mid-March 2021. They laid flowers, teddy bears, and candles at Jasmine's grave in the hopes of turning the site into a place of rest, which reflected her.
May your soul rest in peace wherever you are. If you're watching us, love you and miss you a lot.
The family also planted native plants and trees as a reminder of Kaur's legacy. Jasmine's relatives commented on the tragedy of her death, with her sister stating, "We're feeling very strange, as we never thought in the rarest of dreams this could happen to our Jasmine. And she would say goodbye to this world in such a tragic way." She said, "I'm missing the conversations and the family times we had together." But not everyone was ready to let go at that moment. Although all the way back in India, Singh's mother expressed her unrelenting support for her son, who had pleaded not guilty. Singh's mother detailed a radically different version of the events which had taken place as told by her son. According to Singh, the two wanted to get married toward the end of the relationship, but Kaur's family did not approve the match. Supposedly, that was when Jasmine tried to slit her throat. In an act of mercy, Singh's mother said her son presumed Kaur dead and buried her. The woman went on to say, "We pray before the Almighty to save our son. The only mistake he did was of burying the girl, and that he did so in too depressed state of mind." Had the girl's family members agreed to their marriage, both had been tied in a happy relationship, and the end would not have been so horrific. Singh initially pleaded not guilty of Jasmine Kaur's murder, maintaining that he had only buried her already dead body. However, as autopsy results revealed, that had not been the case. Essentially, Kaur had suffered a terrible, agonizing death through asphyxiation and inhaling dirt. As evidence kept mounting up against him, Singh changed his plea from not guilty to guilty just a month before his trial was scheduled to start in March 2023.
No, we are not surprised. We know from the day one that he is guilty, but he was denying from a long time, but we are happy now that he pleaded guilty.
During the trial, Justice Adam Kimber described Singh's murderous behavior as horrific and callous in the extreme. The judge went on to say, "I am unable to find words to adequately describe how Ms. Kaur must have felt when you placed her in the grave and buried her. The terror she felt when she was abducted, restrained, and kept in the car during the long drive to Mooralana Creek is difficult enough to estimate. I cannot describe the terror Ms. Kaur must have been experiencing when she realized you were burying her alive." Although Singh did not divulge details of exactly how he went about abducting and burying Kaur, the court felt that the evidence, along with Singh's guilty plea, were sufficient for sentencing. Moreover, Justice Kimber stated that the evidence showed that Kaur had clearly endured extreme suffering during the lengthy car trip from Adelaide to Flinders Ranges. It turned out that during the drive itself, Kaur was bound and gagged, unable to see or where she was or understand where she was going. The drive must have taken several hours. Throughout that trip, Ms. Kaur must have been terrified. "You cannot have cared," Justice Kimber said. "You dug a grave and you buried her while she was still alive." According to Kimber, Singh had been methodical, showing clear intent in his actions. There was time for reflection. There was time to depart from the plan. You killed Ms. Kaur in order to punish her for not wanting to be in a relationship with you and for going to the police. The mandatory sentence for murder in Australia is life imprisonment. As a result, Singh was sentenced to almost 23 years in prison without the possibility of parole, and will probably end up spending his entire life locked up. It is also believed that Singh is likely to soon be deported back to his home country of India. Following the trial, Jasmine Kaur's mother, Rajpal Kaur, made this emotional statement. "Today I do not feel happy. I wish that I was not giving this statement and that Jasmine was still alive here by my side." She said, "I talk to her every day. We say goodnight to our children, don't we? So I always say goodnight to my daughter." Justice has prevailed, and I cannot begin to express our relief. We welcome the sentence given. But what I can say is that my family and I have already started our life sentence, having to spend the rest of our lives without Jasmine. What do you think of this tragic story? Do you think Tarakjot Singh was mentally ill? Let us know your opinion in the comments section below.
Station is 365 Main, crossing of Folsom and Harrison. Family not alert, responding control.
A main street in the city of San Francisco covered in trails of blood. The side of a building stained all over by the hand of a man lying face down on the pavement. The murder weapon and the killer are nowhere to be found. And the man He was not just a random victim.
Bob, can you just kind of introduce yourself to the audience? Tell us who you are.
I sure can. Nowadays, I'm the CTO of Square. We're a company that enables you to accept card payments. Prior to that, I was at Google for about 5.5 years.
One of Bob's early projects at Google was to build part of the Android operating system, which sits on more than half the phones in the world. I mean, imagine that, being able to be part of a product that more than half the world uses.
If you have an Android phone, you have Bob Lee to thank for the operating system.
43-year-old Bob Lee had a life envied by many. He was exceptional in what he did and had become a legend in the field of tech. He had a beautiful, healthy family with 2 young daughters bound for success. His company, Cash App, had skyrocketed in the past years. In every respect, Bob had made it. He was living the American dream.
I'm Bob Lee, and I'm MobileCoin's freshly minted, not mine, that would be Bitcoin, Chief Product Officer.
But behind closed doors, Lee would turn to illicit substances and partying. His hidden persona did not make him any less popular, though. In fact, it made him even more likable. Some nights, Crazy Bob, as he used to be called during his college days, would come out to play, and everyone loved it. Things were going well for Lee. Too well, perhaps. Recently, Lee had moved to Miami from San Francisco. He was busy building his new Floridian life when he was called back to his old town for some unfinished business. That is where disaster struck. That is where, in a completely unexpected turn of events, Lee would end up bleeding out on the pavement, ignored by passers-by until his very last breath. But how did it get to this? Let's start at the beginning. Bob Lee moved to San Francisco in 2004, where he started working as an engineer for Google. There, he led Android's core library team. Soon enough, Lee had become the founder of the world's most used operating system. By 2010, Lee had become well known in the tech world. It was then that he joined Square, a payment processing company and a massive stakeholder in the tech and online payment industry. In 2011, only a year after joining the company, Bob was promoted to Chief Technology Officer. It was in 2013 that Lee co-founded Cash App. But Lee wanted more, and he knew he could achieve it. In 2014, Lee resigned from Square, and in 2015, he became the CEO of another company, founding the chat group app Present. The app was aimed at connecting women and helped host the 2018 Women's March in San Francisco. In 2019, Lee moved to the affluent San Francisco Bay community of Mill Valley. In 2021, he became Chief Product Officer of MobileCoin, with the hope that the company would help the hundreds of millions of unbanked people worldwide by giving them access to digital cash. MobileCoin received $66 million in venture backing. It was a success. Lee moved to Miami in October 2022 and was quoted saying that the move was partially influenced by the rising crime rate in San Francisco. But Lee still traveled between San Francisco and Miami for business. It would be from one of those trips that Lee never returned. On the 3rd of April 2023, a friend of Lee's called Witness 1 for privacy reasons arrived at an apartment where they would meet Lee amongst others. The apartment was in the 1500 block of Mission Street in San Francisco. Lee, Kazar Elisanya, and Nima Momini, her brother, had all been drinking when witness number 1 arrived. The witness recognized Elisanya from a previous encounter and remembered knowing that her marriage was on the rocks. The witness and Lee later went over to Lee's hotel room where the witness overheard a conversation between Lee and Momini. The phone call was very intense, with Lee reassuring Momini multiple times that Elisanya had not taken drugs and that nothing inappropriate had happened. Sometime later, the witness and Lee headed over to the witness's apartment. At 8:31 p.m., a white BMW pulled into the Millennium Tower luxury condominium high-rise, also located on Mission Street. Elisanya owns a unit in the building, but it is unclear whether or not she was home at the time. A man identified as Momini was seen entering the skyscraper. 4 hours later, at 12:39 a.m., Lee was seen entering the Millennium Tower as well. After another hour and a half, Momini and Lee were seen leaving the apartment building together and heading into Momini's BMW. The men drove around for a bit, then parked around the 400 block of Main Street for several minutes. At 2:25 a.m., the men got out and stood on the sidewalk for a few minutes. The next time Lee was seen in the early hours of April 4, 2023, he was bleeding out. In surveillance footage from that night, a wounded Lee can be seen walking down Main Street with his phone in one hand. He was holding his side with the other. Stabbed in the side and chest, Lee was struggling to breathe and coordinate his movements. But he saw lights. He crossed the street, and for a moment it seems that he would survive. He went right up to the parked car and lifted his shirt up, using the last ounce of energy he had left. But the driver pulled away, and an exhausted Lee can be seen falling to the ground. But Bob Lee would not give up without a fight. Shortly after his fall, Lee got back up. He went back the way he came before collapsing outside 403 Main Street. At 2:34 a.m., Lee managed to call 911. His panic was tangible through the phone. He screamed, "Help! Someone stabbed me!" Lee then tried to ring the building at 403 Main Street before collapsing in front of the entryway. At 2:40, emergency responders arrived and rendered medical aid before taking Lee to San Francisco General Hospital. It was there that Lee would be pronounced dead that very same evening. An autopsy was performed. Lee had been stabbed 3 times, including one strike that punctured his heart. Yet regardless of the gravity of wounds, Lee fought until the very end. On the 5th of April, the stunned and saddened tech world showered Lee's memory with an outpouring of affection, including social media posts from the likes of Elon Musk. Most blamed the tech mogul's premature death on the rise of violence in San Francisco. Musk even went as far as to challenge San Francisco's district attorney, Brooke Jenkins, asking if the city will take stronger action to incarcerate repeat violent offenders under her administration. On the 7th of April, a suspicious man was seen prowling around the scene of Bob Lee's stabbing. The man, clad all in black and wearing a hood and a hat, appeared to be searching the area. Wheeling away a suitcase, the man searched the surrounding flower beds attentively. But the police found what the man was likely searching for: a murder weapon. Namely, a 4-inch kitchen knife, which had been carelessly discarded in the area. On April 11th, police went through Lee's devices. They found a log for a FaceTime call between Momini and Lee, along with a text message from Elisanya saying, quote, "Just wanted to make sure you're doing okay, because I know Nima came way down hard on you. And thank you for being such a classy man handling it with class. Love you selfish pricks." Unquote. It's unclear what Elisanya was referring to, but it became obvious that Momini and Lee had some sort of conflict on the night of his death. But what role exactly did Momini play in the mogul's demise? And where exactly did Elisanya fit into the picture? The answer to those questions would shock all of those in Lee's life. A few days into the investigation, police acquired CCTV footage of the exact moment that Lee was stabbed. At 2:30 a.m. in a dark spot nearby, where Lee would later be found, a man can be seen lunging at Lee with a kitchen knife. Lee was stabbed 3 times in the hip and chest area. Lee then staggered down the street, leaving a trail of blood behind him. His killer went the other way, leaving the scene. But who was the culprit? Who could have wanted a guy like Lee dead? Lee's killer would later be identified as Nima Momini. On the 13th of April at 5:05 a.m., San Francisco SWAT officers surrounded the Bessler building on Harlan Street in Emeryville. Inside the building was an unaware Momini, sleeping in his second-floor loft. The building's sleeping residents were surprised by a voice bellowing over loudspeakers, "We have a warrant for your arrest. Come out with your hands up." By 10 a.m., Momini had been placed in jail on suspicion of murder. At 12:30 p.m. that same day, the charges against Momini were publicly announced.
I am here today to formally announce the charges against Mr. Nima Momeni for the murder of Bob Lee.
Mr. Momeni was taken into custody without incident in Emeryville, California. He was transported to the San Francisco County Jail and booked on one charge of murder.
District Attorney Jenkins also denounced the multiple social media posts speculating about the rise in violence in San Francisco.
Serve to mislead the world in their perceptions of San Francisco and also negatively impact the pursuit of justice for victims of crime.
The following day at 9 a.m., Momini appeared in court. Both parties agreed to postpone his hearing until April 25th, as his attorney was away at the time. The judge in the case ruled that Momini would remain in jail until his hearing without bail. Momini's attorney, Paula Canny, has gone on record saying that she believes Momini is innocent.
Of course I'm pleading not guilty. He is not guilty, okay? There's a lot of drugs in Bob Lee's system. I mean, Bob Lee's system is like the Walgreens of recreational drugs.
According to Canny, the CCTV footage of Momini and Lee is not clear enough to be considered evidential. But why would Momini commit such a heinous crime against a man he knew? And moreover, against a man who is important to his sister. The motive of the crime has not yet been clearly established, but evidence is mounting. In order to understand Momini's motivations, you first need to understand Momini. 38-year-old Momini is the son of Iranian immigrants and a practitioner of Zoroastrianism. Momini worked as the owner of a technological services company called Expand IT, which had its address registered as Momini's residence. Reportedly, in spite of Momini living in a loft which cost close to $1 million, his neighbors had never seen any employees on his company's premises. Moreover, although Momini claimed to have graduated from UC Berkeley, the university has no record of his ever even attending. So, Momini had always been a man of secrets, or perhaps of lies. Momini also has a brief criminal history. Namely, he was charged with illegal possession of a switchblade knife that he tried to sell. He spent 10 days in jail as a result. Recently, he had also been cited for assault. Momini's former neighbors gave polarized accounts of the man, either praising him or villainizing him.
Total shock. I'm in the public relations business. We don't normally wind up working next to killers. Very warm, welcoming, very nice fellow, like any other technology consultant here in the Bay Area. Lives in a live-work loft in the heart of Emeryville's technology district, and handed us a stack of cards saying, if you ever need IT help, give me a call.
While some said Momini seemed like a nice individual, others reported that other occupiers hated him. Supposedly, Momini was rude, stunk up the hallways with his cigs, was completely inconsiderate, refused to pay rent for 4 to 5 months at a time, and was just an awful human being. Moreover, Momini was apparently a tough guy, super into weapons, which he kept lying around his apartment. Allegedly, Momini even called one of his former neighbors only hours after Lee's killing. He asked him for all his alcohol, which he then likely used to numb the guilt of taking Lee's life. A few days later, Momini went back to the same neighbor, asking him to travel to Colombia with him. Court documents paint the possible motive for the murder as having stemmed from a secret relationship between Lee and Kazar Alessandra, Momini's younger sister. The possibility is corroborated by the fact that Kazar's marriage to prominent San Francisco plastic surgeon Dino Alessandra was experiencing turbulence. But Lee's supposed relationship with Alessandra was not Momini's only issue. It is alleged that Alessandra had a substance abuse problem and that Lee was encouraging it through his own behavior. It has been discovered that only a few hours before his killing, Lee and Elisanya had visited an alleged drug dealer's apartment together. The apartment is home to a man convicted in 2022 of felony possession of a controlled substance with the intent to sell. During police raids of the man's previous residences, police found a variety of drugs, including MDMA and LSD. Prosecutors described the individual as deeply engaged in the trafficking of controlled substances. Kamira Kudusovic, an alleged friend of the Momini siblings, has also commented on their relationship. It appears that Khazar used drugs so frequently that it caused a rift between her and her brother. This, along with how Momini was always playing Big Brother and looking after her, paints a picture of distrust between the two siblings. Kudusovic had also been told by Momini to not offer his sister drugs. Eventually, Kudusovic wrote to Elisanya in order to ask Khazar to stop calling her. She was basically asking me to buy drugs with my money, she said. Khazar and Lee had met in 2020, and an alleged romantic relationship bloomed between them. Additionally, to both Lee and Khazar being married at the time of their meeting, Lee was also known for his substance abuse. Tirana Ipakchi, a close friend of Lee's, said he liked to unfortunately do a lot of drugs. But what might have seemed like a playful affair to Lee was a matter of life and death to Khazar's overprotective brother. And the unfortunate tech mogul would come to find this out the hard way. Currently, Momini is being held on suicide watch in prison, with police reporting him being severely unsettled. But this is not unexpected. Momini faces a maximum sentence of 26 years to life in prison if he's convicted on all the charges against him. On the 25th of April, Momini's attorney argued that she had not received enough evidence from prosecutors to move forward with an arraignment. Momini has not currently entered a plea. However, it is expected that he will plead not guilty. Rick Lee, Bob Lee's father, posted saying, "I just lost my best friend." And what did Lee lose his son over? The jealousy and desire for control of a deeply disturbed man.
Good evening. Some of the country's top rap music artists have been paying tribute to a Birmingham rapper who was stabbed to death at the weekend. 18-year-old Joshua Rivera, whose stage name was Deb's Man, was seen as a rising star.
Every time that I see your face, I feel the pain. When I'm on road, just knowing that you ain't here, don't feel the same. I miss you, bro. Love you, bro. Swear I wish I could hug you, bro. I need you, bro.
A rising star honoring his tragically murdered friend. A jealous rival looking for any excuse to swing a knife. An 18-year-old boy with a stab to the heart, fighting to survive with every cell of his being. This is the tragic story of the artist known as Deb's Man, and his premature death on the night of September 20th, 2013. Growing up in Birmingham, Joshua Rivera found fitting in difficult. He had ADHD and would often get into trouble as a young child. But as he grew into a young man, Josh distanced himself from any sketchy entourages, instead fixing on what would become his medium of self-expression: music.
Yo, I gotta do me. Why would I try to meet anyone else? I am myself is only one of me.
His album Too Real was released in July 2013. In just a short amount of time, 18-year-old Rivera had climbed to the top of iTunes hip-hop chart. But in spite of being a rising star of the grime genre, Rivera was an openly sensitive artist. He posted photos with his grandmother, Linda, for his followers to see, and his most listened track to this day is a song called One Love.
One love to the man in my circle, we're gonna make it, yeah, that's for certain. One love to the haters pushing me to pick up the mic and keep making.
Rivera's openness and affection was comforting and inspirational to his fans. But what many did not know is that it had come from a place of pain. In 2009, Joshua's father, Anselm Ribera, was convicted of murder. On the 9th of January 2009, Ribera and 2 other men armed with a handgun and a sledgehammer burst into a post office with the intent to rob it. The office was located in the quaint village of Fairfield, Worcestershire, and was precisely the sort of place an armed robbery would have been nothing short of unexpected. Kenneth and Judy Hodson Walker were inside the post office when the attack happened. Their son, 29-year-old Craig, ran down from their flat in an attempt to defend them from the robbers. Armed with a cricket bat, the young man had no idea what he was up against. Unwilling to take any damage, 34-year-old Ribera shot Hodson Walker at point-blank range. But Ribera was actually supposed to have been imprisoned long before this incident. Ribera's details were circulated on the police national computer in September 2008 after his DNA was matched to evidence recovered from 2 post office robberies a few miles apart. The 2 previous robberies had taken place in March and May 2008. Ribera therefore already has a reputation, but it took the death of a 29-year-old innocent for him to be detained. Ribera was sentenced to 21 years for attempted robbery, another 21 years for possession of a firearm with intent to endanger life, and 34 years for attempted murder. The other 2 men involved in the attack were given similar sentences. Ribera left behind Josh, his teenage son, after taking away the life of another young man, shooting him in the heart. Ribera would be struck with a very harsh truth only 4 years later, that history is bound to repeat itself, this time at the expense of his own child. Alison Cope, Joshua Ribera's mother, recalls the lifelong impact that his father's actions had on him. When I said the word murder, Josh just demolished the front room. He smashed everything up. He was crying. He was angry. His dad was the scum of the earth, as was quoted in a newspaper. His dad was a murderer. His dad had destroyed a young man's life. The police were stopping and searching him and saying things like, "Where's your dad, Josh?" And then he would erupt. Josh's behavior took a wrong turn after the conviction of his father. But after being sent to a young offender institution for theft, Ribera became set on turning his life around.
The crime scene, my team are running it still. And the way that I'm spitting is nothing but ill. My man don't want it with me though. You best to go make
His music career was quick to take off amongst fans of grime. Prior to his debut album, Ribera's biggest success was his win at the Lord of the Mics rap battle in 2012.
Man is a heavyweight. Am I a heavyweight? No, it's cool. I got the heavyweight flow when I tear down any stage show.
But the star's life, known under the stage name Depsman, would be tragically cut short only a few months after the release of his first album. This is his story. On the 20th of September 2013, Ribera headed over to TC's club in the Selly Oak area of Birmingham. The rapper was attending a fundraiser event for Kyle Sheehan, a former friend who had been fatally stabbed at the age of 16. Sheehan's death had taken place exactly a year before, on the 21st of September 2012. The aim of the fundraiser was for a headstone to be placed on Sheehan's grave. Sheehan was walking back from playing football when he was stabbed in the leg in Bartley Green Park. He would later pass away as a result of the 28th of September.
He went through such a lot from Friday. As you know, his leg was amputated, his kidneys failed, his liver's failed. He just, bless him, went through so much. Somebody needs to come forward and let us know, because we're in limbo now. We can do nothing until somebody, Carl had lots and lots of friends, and somebody needs to speak to the police and just, don't let him die in vain. We need justice for what happened to him. He was 16.
To this day, the 16-year-old's killer is yet to be identified.
We haven't got sufficient evidence to charge anybody with murder, and that's why we need people to come forward. There were 20 to 30 people fighting, and as you would probably assume, we make a number of arrests around disorders of that sort of incidents. But we know there were people stood by Kyle and would have seen him being stabbed and would have seen who did it as well. We need them to be brave today and come forward to the police.
While at the fundraiser, joined by a young woman, Ribera spots Armani Mitchell, also known under the moniker Switch. They walk past each other. As Ribera walks away, Mitchell turns around and follows Ribera. A confrontation ensues, but Ribera walks away, unwilling to give in to Mitchell's taunts. As the two men pass each other again, Mitchell once again turns around and follows Ribera outside. This time a larger altercation takes place. The woman Ribera is with turns out to be Rudy Lee, Mitchell's ex, and the mother of his 20-month-old child. Ribera ends up punching Mitchell. In a fit of jealousy, Mitchell threatens to wet Ribera, meaning that he would stab him. But Ribera turns around and walks back into the club. Eventually, Mitchell is thrown out of the venue, but he returns wearing a different set of clothes. This time, he is also bearing a hunting knife. As Ribera leaves the club, Mitchell, along with another man, can be seen following him. In a final confrontation, Mitchell swings at Ribera, stabbing him through the heart. Then he flees the scene. Hanging on to his life, Ribera walks back into the club, using his t-shirt to relieve his bleeding heart before collapsing. A woman at the scene performs CPR on him before paramedics arrive. In his final moment of consciousness, Ribera whispers to the name, Switch, to the paramedics. Surgeons performed open-heart surgery on Ribera for 6 hours, replacing all of his blood. The young star suffered 5 cardiac arrests on the operating table before finally passing away.
I can't remember the drive home. I just remember coming in here and it being left how it was when I left the previous evening. Josh's bedroom door was open, trainers, aftershave, as he'd left it, and then I just sat on the kitchen floor. I don't know why, but cold surfaces kind of kept me alert. So in the hospital I sat on the floor. At home I came and sat on the kitchen floor on the tiles, and then I just screamed and screamed and screamed.
Is this video answering your questions? Want to know more? Make sure you check out our other videos for more true crime stories like this one. Shortly before 11 p.m. on the 20th of September, local police received a report of a stabbing having taken place at TC's club. It is around 11:45 p.m. on that same night that 18-year-old Armani Mitchell turns himself in at a police station in Dudley. His accomplice, a 19-year-old from Edgbaston, is also arrested after turning himself into Bloxwich Police Station the following day. He is later released. As soon as Debsman's death was made public, online tributes from fellow artists and fans alike started pouring in.
I can't actually describe it. He's not gone to me. Like, as you can see, he's not gone anywhere.
When it's somebody this young, it pulls people up short, and therefore people are much more, I think, confused, possibly angry, and maybe even full of a bit of despair, and therefore that makes it a much more raw occasion for people.
Many of his songs were reposted online in the outpour of grief, including his tribute to Kyle Sheehan, the friend whose memorial Ribera had attended on September 20th. The news of the stabbing shocked the club's local community. One local resident was quoted the next day after Debsman's death. "I can't believe it would happen around here. This is a student area, not a bad area. There's no one around at the moment because of the holidays, so I have no idea who would be around. It makes you worried to be out in this part of Birmingham at night." Although Mitchell, the police's primary suspect, remained in custody, he denied murder. There was a huge lack of information regarding what had actually happened that night. To this day, there are still parts law enforcement believe to be missing from the timeline. In November 2013, police released images of 10 witnesses that they wanted to speak to in connection with Ribera's death. The motive for the stabbing was still unclear, and there was a possibility it might have been linked to organized crime. Joshua's mum, Alison Cope appealed directly to those in the images to come forward. She said, "I would like to personally ask all the people shown in the images today to spend a moment imagining someone had killed you, broke your mother's heart and the hearts of your family and friends. Would you want people to come forward for you and for your mother? Yes, you would. Don't be seen as the person who didn't help put the pieces together in this investigation. You might feel the information you have isn't important, but it is. And I need you to help me. So please contact the police." A motive for the crime, however, did soon come to light, and it shocked all those grieving the unfortunate Ribera. The woman Ribera was seen with by Mitchell, Rudy Lee, was the killer's ex, as well as the mother of his child. The couple regularly argues over custody and access to the child. On the night of the stabbing, Mitchell saw Rudy Lee at the bar and confronted her over why she is not at home looking after their child. She said he held up his hand and told her she had 5 minutes to leave, or he would beat her up. She says she told him to shut up and walked away. Later that same evening, she was seen with Ribera. The motive for Mitchell's killing appeared to be jealousy and misdirected anger towards Ribera. Rudy Lee said the reason she was with Ribera was that he appeared to be very drunk and told her he felt sick, so she offered to take him home. However, it is believed that Ribera also offered Lee some sort of protection from her violent ex. The aftermath of the killing saw a swift 4-week trial, with the judge concluding, "Your criminal activity really only lasted for about 30 seconds, from the time it took to leave the club, when you took out the knife, to the moment that you used it. So I accept there was a lack of premeditation. Before you used the knife, you had already been struck once by Joshua Ribera in an earlier incident." During the trial, Mitchell denied murder, instead saying that he was carrying the knife for protection. Mitchell claimed that he closed his eyes and swung the hunting knife in a bid to scare the rapper. Unbeknownst to him, allegedly, he had stabbed him in the heart. Mitchell said, "My hand was in my pocket, on my knife. I thought if I brandished the knife he would back off and I would have enough time to run away. I closed my eyes and swung the knife in front of me so he would see it. I didn't think I had stabbed him. My intention was to scare him away. That's what I thought did happen. I got away and he was unhurt. He said it was only the next day when he handed himself into police that he was told of Ribera's fate." However, the judge argued that Mitchell deliberately lunged at Ribera with the knife, with the intent to harm him. This was supported by witnesses claiming that Mitchell had threatened to stab Ribera earlier in the night. Aless Broadfield, who knew both men, told the court that Ribera came up to her in an outside smoking area and appeared angry. She said Ribera told her Mitchell had just threatened to stab him. The judge sentenced Mitchell to a minimum of 18 years in prison.
Tension spilled over into arrests at this murder trial. The victim, Joshua Ribera, was a rising music star. His fans angered and distraught at his violent death. Today there was uproar in the public gallery as the guilty verdict was read out. Joshua Ribera's mother is still in a state of shock at the death of her only son.
There's no justice for Joshua because he was too special and too amazing. He could have had 100 years in prison and it still wouldn't be justice, but there's justice served for killing another person.
Ribera's tragic death left a lot of friends, fans and family hurting, but he also left behind a legacy. His mother believes that Ribera died on the happiest day of his life. That same morning, Ribera had learnt how much he'd made from the pre-order sales of his album, which had hit #1 in the iTunes charts earlier in 2013. As soon as he saw it, he was so happy. He went and spent the lot on me and his family and friends, she reveals. He bought me a Michael Kors watch and had it gift-wrapped. He gave it to me saying if it wasn't for you, I wouldn't be the person I am now. And I love you forever. To the end. Moreover, Ribera's story has been used as a vehicle for knife crime awareness for the past 10 years. It is widely believed his mother's campaigns against knife crime and the awareness brought on by Ribera's death have saved countless young lives.
Josh's friends say they hope his high profile will at least make people talk about knife crime.
Deps is like known and he's looked up to by so many kids, and like he could like seriously, like this could change everything. Yeah.
Following Ribera's death, Birmingham's crime commissioner Bob Jones created anonymous knife drop-off points around Birmingham. They were aimed at youths who were concealing weapons, urging them to think twice about their actions. 9 years on from Depsman's premature death, in October 2022, McCann London brought Ribera back to life using deepfake technology. The music video featuring Ribera rapping about his life and tragic death was commissioned by the Joshua Ribera Foundation, the charity that combats knife crime in his name. The video is titled Life Cut Short, and it features an eerily lifelike version of Ribera rapping about the events of the 20th of September 2013.
Before the night when everything ended and it tore my family apart. Before the night we went to remember, bro, when I died to a bleed in the heart.
The lyrics to the song were ghost-written by Midlands rappers Shadow CV and T. Rhodes. The project benefited from the support of Ribera's mum.
My name is Alison Cope. I'm an anti-knife campaigner and I'm Depsman's mum. Using technology, I have brought my son back to deliver this message from beyond the grave.
The anti-knife campaign played in schools all over the UK in hopes of educating a future generation against knife crime. The video also played in 65 prisons. Alison Cope, Depsman's mother, said of the campaign, "I just received a message from a young man who was going out last night with a knife to deal with a situation. He watched the video and told me he just couldn't go out with the knife because it wouldn't be worth him losing his family." What is your opinion on this tragic story? At The Decoder, we compile videos based on multiple credible sources to bring you the truth about true crimes. Your support is what keeps us going, so make sure you like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell on your way out. And we will see you next time on The Decoder.